but you will see the other side. You will see the other side of the approach. First of all, because this was not an external project, but an internal project. Second, because in this project the methodology was applied with a hidden agenda, whereas in the City People Light original application of the approach, you would really want to learn about innovation concepts, and you would really want to do this by creating relationships. Here, the innovation process was functional to employer branding and organizational futures purposes that were not so much explicitly communicated. So it became a sort of a vehicle to try to cheer up the engineering department that was quite depressed. And then Karimu will take over with Felipe, and he will bring his own point of view in a very experiential and immersive fashion, starting from the collaboration we had and going into what he learned from his practice. Correct me if I'm wrong.
As far as I do.
Good. Well, of course. I will not present Arena as a company. You have the link if you want to know more. Basically, it's a small medium enterprise. We are talking at the time when we did the project, we are talking about an enterprise with 125, 150 people, staff, of which 25 engineers, very creative and very technical engineers, production lines, 2 production lines, Industry 4.0 production lines, staffed but very highly specialized technical people, engineers who make it work, and production people, mostly immigrants from various countries, mainly Poland and Eastern Europe. The company is situated in Zundert, which used to be a a trafficking small village on the border between Belgium and the Netherlands. So basically you need to drive direction Belgium, exit the Netherlands, go back into the Netherlands, and you find the town of Zundert. The company is very interesting because it was founded 40 years ago by a guy called René Hertz, and he was a genius. He used to be at Philips. He was an engineering genius, and he made 35 years or something like that, 30 years of this company, always one step ahead. The business of the company is the design and the production of digital lighting and mechatronics. So basically, if you want to do this hardware, but you want to do it highly customized, very specialized, if you want to put it on an oil platform and make sure that it will never stop working, even if there is a fire or if it sinks in the water, you go to a company like that, and instead of producing a billion of these hardware pieces, you produce maybe 1,000 only, designed to your specifications, and they will test it and they will make it work. They were working a lot. If any of you is familiar with Eindhoven, there is the kind of brain bridge on the A2, on the highway, which is an installation with dynamic digital lighting. It's signed off by Philips, but practically it was designed and realized at Renault. So they subcontract projects for very big companies. The thing is that they also subcontracted a beautiful bridge in Istanbul, but for a combination of circumstances, the hardware they delivered didn't work as expected. And this was a project by Philips. It resulted in a lawsuit, and they had to pay a huge amount of money to Philips because the project went wrong. So basically, around 5-7 years ago, the company was bankrupt because they delivered a big project. The timing was too short, the specifications were unclear, the Russian boats pass under the bridge with very powerful radars that mess up the electronics and they jam the digital part, which was unknown. All sorts of reasons. Philips said, this is not working, so we bring you to court. And actually Philips won the case and René Gertz lost the company. The company was purchased by a Canadian corporation from Montreal, run by a very eccentric guy of 80 years old, a billionaire who just does what he likes. This corporation is in commodities, so basically they sell electronic parts that go for a few cents a bit. And they thought, well, this is a nice, very highly specialized, very creative firm in the Netherlands. Let's buy it as a kind of boutique business. They put a management there of 5 people. It didn't work, so they moved on to a model of 2 joint CEOs. It also didn't work. In my opinion, if you have a company, you always want to have 1 or 3 on top, because one, if he decides and he makes the wrong decisions, you can always change him or her. And if you have 3, there will always be a majority. Besides, of course, I'm Roman Catholic, so the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. That's the thing that seems to work, yes? So, in this case, they went for a management structure with 2 guys running it. And that's the time when I came in, because one of the 2 guys, you remember the last time I showed you the strategic marketing funnel of Philips Lighting, that was the senior director in charge of that funnel. So we knew each other from 20 years ago at Philips, and now he, as a CEO, joint CEO of RENA, he called me in because he had some problems he wanted to hear my opinion about. And the problems were, first, that he promised he would go to a very important fair, which is called Light and Building in Frankfurt, with an innovation vision. The fair was in 6 months and he had nothing. Second, his employer branding proposition did not work because there are not many people who are very happy to go and move to Zundert. Well, they have a flower show, they have some adult entertainment facilities, but there is nothing. Housing is very cheap, so I tried to tell my wife, well, you know, in Zundert, housing is very cheap. And she looked at me and she said, of course, nobody wants to live there. So he had a problem of employer branding. And the third thing, it's very difficult when you are a company. The guy who created this company was very charismatic. He would fly with his own airplane to Frankfurt, his own staff. And when there was a problem, because people were having arguments, they would go to him and he would he would send them to his wife. Basically, that was his management style. But it was a father figure. And it's very difficult to move from a social environment where you have a father figure to a social environment where there are these 5 guys, where one is an American lady and the other one is a Dutch guy who wants to move everything to Breda, and the other one comes from Philips. Coming from Philips didn't make you very popular at RENA, since Philips bankrupted the company. Yeah. It reminds me a little bit of Star Wars being purchased by Disney, but that's a completely different topic. So at the time, his question was, he knew City People Light, he knew the approach that I shared with you last time, so he knew how to work about lighting innovation. He had one problem related to lighting innovation, that was, I need to have a vision to present in Frankfurt, otherwise all my clients will look at me as a fool, because I've been promising a grand vision and they have nothing. But his real problem was that he had 25 engineers who are supposed to be, they are a bit nerdy, very fun people, very technical, but they were supposed to be upbeat and challenging because the company has always been at the forefront of technology. And that's the reason why you go to a company like that. I want to have 1,000 pieces of that, and I cannot do it because I need it so sophisticated that my internal resources as Philips cannot deliver it. So I go to that company. Therefore, the company needs to have the best motivated and the happiest engineers on the planet. And they were very depressed, completely terrorized. This is a company that never fired anybody until there was the grand guy. And all of a sudden you get this management of 5 people and they start to fire staff. These are really very heavy traumas. And they are equivalent to the trauma that you can get as a kid when your parents divorce. Because your world, in your little world, is based on a harmony, on a presence, I don't want to steal your word, but on a holistic balance. I'm not very often using the word holistic. And all of a sudden, this holistic balance is gone, and you need to be confronted with an organization that is not a family-led organization based on values, but it's a business organization led by 5 guys who need to produce numbers. And after a couple of years, there are not the numbers, so 3 of the 5 guys get fired. So it's a completely different world. And the real question from the CEO was, could you find a way to fix this trauma? Well, he didn't know he had a trauma. He knew that he had 25 people who were getting sick and not coming to work happy. Yeah? I will show you the final result. That is what was presented in Frankfurt, and then I will tell you a few words about how we got there. This is basically they normally in this event, in this fair in Frankfurt, you go to this small booth of these companies and they show a lot of technology. So you have a room half the size of this room, and what you will have as many possible little machines, circuitry, software that runs on computer simulations. They went there. We came with the final design of their booth, which was empty and only showing 4 screens with this presentation. So they really differentiated themselves by bringing a vision. The vision we call the vision ahead. We worked with a team where there was me. Then I brought in a former staff member of my team at Philips who has her own company, very successful, working on aesthetic, color and material trends. And she also used to work on CDP Polite. Actually, I sold the project with a business partner, and then the day of the signature of the contract, I changed the business partner. But do as I say, don't do as I do, because that's really not ideal. But I had a business partner who is an MBA and works from the point of view of let's have a workshop of half a day and then we follow up on Skype. But what they needed was not a workshop in McKinsey style, was a shrink who would be there twice a week. So I changed the composition of the team last minute because I realized it would not work with the kind of approach. And yes?
Can I ask you,
yes.
What do you mean by McKinsey style?
Well, McKinsey style, that's a very interesting question. McKinsey knows everything and knows it best than anybody else in the world. So they come to you, they sell you for 700 euros an hour, sending a junior consultant. They sell you the same thing that they sell everybody, and when after 2 years it doesn't work, it's your fault because you cannot use the best thing in the world. My approach is that every company is different. I look at the organization as a socio-cultural, holistic, sorry, you know, I want to cut my tongue, but as a holistic, I analyze them as if they were a village in an unknown country. I work a lot from a psychoanalytical point of view on their traumas to understand the deeper layer of fear, whatever, their needs, and from there I try to rebuild in a process a platform or a context where they can restart. So it's totally the opposite. And my business partner at the time is a very tall and very big guy from Naples who were living in Warsaw. He's an MBA and is really a genius for anything that is digital. But basically, he didn't want to come to Zundert because who wants to go to Zundert? And before signing the contract, I visited them 5 times and I made 200 kilometers, 1,000 kilometers with my car just to go there and have a coffee. So this was a relational project and not a project that you can sell to Coca-Cola and where you need to have an Excel sheet and things like that. Yeah? Did I answer your question? Well, I will show you the result that was presented two years ago in Frankfurt, and it remained as their innovation vision quite fast, because the point here is the content is not that you see, and I will make some comments. Feel free to jump in at times. I will make some comments. But you will see the content that is important as a content the moment it's presented. If I was to write a paper for a journal, I would use this content. Actually, I have a letter that authorizes me to do whatever I want to valorize it. But actually, below this content, it was very important how the process went in terms of reaggregating the engineers and the company. So the content was an excuse to go through a process. The official reason was we needed to be in Frankfurt, but the real reason was I needed this company to act as a group again and not act as a bunch of people, of individuals in terror. So this is the level. Lighting and electronics, the way you want it, is the slogan of the company. Basically, the customization and the service they claim. The innovation vision was delivered with 4 concepts, one kind of overarching, and these are very far away visions of how technology could evolve in the future, but with the city people light approach. We had a matrix, you remember, I will not go into the details because it's not the purpose of the class, but basically we customized the matrix, because if we went, it's a pretty redneck, down-to-earth company. And if we went to these cowboys with the Storia identity, they would probably tell us that's the door. So we geared the metrics to the common sense and common language of the company, and through the process we analyzed, we let them come up with their own clusters of where the company was going and where the future was going, and then we mapped 4 different conceptual areas where concepts could be developed. Yes?
How did you do that? How did you let them form their own strategy?
Through 4 workshops. I can show you the workshops in a minute, or if you want to see the workshop first, I can switch presentation.
No,
it's not a problem.
Is it marked? Is it coming later?
I have it, yes,
Yeah.
unless he cuts me because of time. Basically, we prepared at the very end a charter that remains as a kind of manifesto. I mentioned my book. I brought you a copy, where we didn't call it manifesto again to make it more in the language of the organization, but it's the same function of a manifesto, kind of a reference text that remained. We worked with socio-cultural scenarios. So we worked with future directions of where the world is going. We had 4, from individual experiences to holistic awareness, from client relationship management to integrated service. That's a quite important shift in their business. You don't send the sales representative once a month, but you are constantly online to support your client. From customer service excellence to designed around you. So basically a switch of mindset from I get a job, I do the job based on the specifications to really go into the business of the client. And from technology leadership to knowledge sharing, this was very important because this company is sitting in the middle of nowhere. But there is a town next to it, which is Zundert, where there is a primary school when there are senior citizens. There are universities where there are the students who will become the engineers that they need. So the idea is not to act as we are the best technology company in the middle of the desert, but to connect both to the local communities and to open up. A lot of the engineers of my age are homesick of the time when technology was something magic, and they really have a drive to bring technology back into society. So we identified these opportunities. So these are the 4 concepts, and those are the 4 scenarios, and these are the 4 concepts. From individual experience to holistic awareness, the concept is called design for darkness, and basically is the idea to individualize the public lighting. Just like we used to have the phone booth and the public phones, where you would go with a coin and you would make a phone call, and that was public, and the lighting infrastructure that we have is public. But with the present technology, you could have individual devices like looking like glasses that light up things and enable you to have the same functional experience of lighting, but on the individual basis. This became a kind of the icon of the whole thing. In the booth, there were displays showing this presentation. At the entrance of the booth, to get people in, there was a kind of pillar with a pair of these, a mock-up of these glasses that acted as a sort of attractor. Yeah, well, very typically, the question was, how do we get people into the booth? And the answer is, you can put somebody dressed up like Adolf Hitler, then people will get curious, but it's not going to do very good with respect to your brand and to your concepts. So we really worked a bit at the communication level, and we identified these goggles as the kind of signature object that could make people stop, so that they would stand there and then they would go into the booth, and it worked quite well. And this is the summary of the concept. This is as an innovation concept. In 2018 it looks good. I actually had this concept in 2006 in the City People Light book. It came out from the Chinese workshop we ran then in Shanghai. So it's not new. It's not like, wow, it's totally new. It came from them. It's not that we gave them the book and we told them, oh, there is this, you can choose. It really came from a workshop team that came out. Well, actually, Karim was there and he saw it coming. The second, yeah, we also looked into the company, because then, of course, you show the goggles, you show the magic glasses, but what are you talking about? You make hardware. So we looked into the company for possible proof points, and we found projects in Schiedam and in Amsterdam, where this principle, not the magic glasses, because they are not on the market, but this principle of activating light, personalizing light, creating a holistic experience is already deployed with current hardware. This was important because we were not there to look like intelligent guys. We were there to help them on a commercial fair, and the salespeople needed a hook to go back from our story, holistic story, down into the catalog of products. So we gave them these proof points as the way to activate the story immediately based on their catalog. This is very important because without this, the whole thing falls apart in its business function. The second, infinite light, it's also a concept. It's a concept where instead of having this kind of light, you buy this fixture, maybe in 5 years or in 7 years, or if you drive an Alfa Romeo in 3 years, the lamp goes out of work, then you change it, you call, you buy a new one. This is the old model. The new model in this kind of industry is you don't pay me the products, you buy a subscription, and then I give you the lighting fixture, I give you the hardware, I give you all sorts of platforms and all sorts of tools. The little drone there came from the company and from the research we did from the company because somebody brought a drone at work as his hobby. So we really looked for objects in the company that could help us to make these relevant for the people. And basically the contract is not a contract where I buy a thing, I install it, and it has a guarantee. It's a contract like you have with Vodafone, when if you don't have the telephone line, you call Vodafone and you say, I have a problem with the internet, and they fix it. So it's the switch from hardware to service. We also found proof points. We found proof points in a building in Utrecht where they already work with this kind of contract. We also find proof points in other parts of the business. They also do very advanced kitchen units for very high-end brands that work on the same principle. So on the principle of constant connectivity, constant service, and the relationship between you as a technology company and the client that is not based, I need this, I buy this from you, and if it breaks, I call you back. But it's more based on the idea, I get the device for free, and then I have a contract where we have a connected relationship over time. The third one, because this is a manufacturing company, we looked what's the next step. Now clients go to them, and a client will give a brief, will say we need hardware with this kind of characteristics, that's impossible, we make it possible. But what's the next step? And the idea here was to bring a 3D printing and to bring rapid prototyping to a whole new level where the client can come out, or the prospect client can come to you. You can have a session of half a day. In the session there is the 3D printing of a mock-up or a prototype, and the client goes home with a prototype, which is a completely different sales process than, oh, this is the contract. This is really bringing the client and the relationship into the Fab Lab and making it work for the yes.
We were so interested in looking how the workshops.
Yes.
How you design those workshops.
Yeah, that's the next presentation. Okay. Should I can cut here. Well, I will be very fast. I will be very fast. This is the production line they have. They have the most advanced Industry 4.0 machinery. So advanced that it has a lot of bugs. So actually, they are doing the testing of the machines for the ASL, the German company that produces this machine, but this is a state-of-the-art production lines, and it's really expensive. It's a few million euros, but they are already at the forefront of Industry 4.0. Therefore, they can claim we will go into rapid prototyping. The last one, I will be fast because it's quite easy. It's opening up the company into an academy and bringing the children from the primary school, the senior citizens, universities from Poland or Bulgaria and Romania, making, this is the brightest engineer they had at the time, and he was the one, he had his desk that was a kind of Efteling in miniature with all the technology and lights and stuff. So basically opening up the company and creating a learning community around it. Now, I will switch to the workshop you care about.
The learning community, is that already implemented or is that a plan?
That's a funny question. Can you hold your thought and come back to it?
Yes, I will.
It's a simple task to close a PowerPoint and open a new one, and yet well, this presentation is very long, so I will give you a flavor. But that was the result. That was presented in Frankfurt. That did its job. And in 4 months, we went from zero, from a bunch of individuals in fear, to that shared vision that came out of a last workshop in Reisbergen with 25 people in the room, where Karimu was also part of the team. He joined us, and he did some exercises related to Imagineering, and he contributed to the design of the workshop. So we went in 4 or 5 months from zero to a very precise and completely shared vision of innovation that was presented at use. How did we go there? This is the design of the workshops. The workshops, well, there was a lot of research before where I interviewed people with in-depth interviews in Dutch. We analyzed the company from a visual point of view. We took pictures of everything, the little sign around the toilets or the waste on the floor to understand, and we gave that back. And they didn't have the money to pay for a research report, but we brought the results of the research. For example, I brought slogans, what I heard and what I should hear. And for example, one of the things that I heard was I want to work here because it's 10 minutes walk from my house. And instead I made the statement should have been, I want to work here because there is the quality of life of the countryside with the technology that you would find in New York. So there was a lot of cynicism and a lot of fear, and I took what I heard in the interviews literally, and I translated it into possible
Like
change.
A
Yeah.
vision.
Sorry.
A vision from.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is, when we came here, we already done 3 workshops. We had a lot of turmoil in the process. I found out that there was a problem of unfair dismissal of a member of staff, so I was called by one of the seniors who told me this is a company where if you speak up your mind, they fire you. I brought it in the workshop, so that there was a very emotional, confrontational moment. So it's not coming from nowhere. It's coming after 3-4 months of very intense process.
How was the mindset of the employees? Were they very open-minded to all these workshops?
Well, we had
Resistance?
we had a tipping point because at a certain point in a workshop there was a research director, there was an engineering director, a nice guy. We used to have breakfast on the McDonald's. Going to Belgium, we would meet each other. But he was supposed to be the kind of ambassador of this process. And this guy you see here is a genius. He's a typical Brabants. He has cowboy boots and he drives a Renault van with his name Marcel in front. And he has another company. He's the maverick in the organization. He's basically, whenever he shakes hands, he gets 1,000 euros in his hand. The way he makes money is very genuine. He, for example, he was competing with another guy to have the first badge. The number 3 and number 4 badge, because he has the number 4, but he claims that he was in the company before as a student, and the other guy says, yeah, but I have the badge number 3. So he is very loyal, but very critical. The engineering director, at a certain point, we were in the ideation workshop, he came up and he said, yeah, no, we cannot do this, we cannot look into the future, we respond to clients, and basically he kept inside his real opinion. We are not Philips, this is not applicable to us. And then everybody was sitting around the table, you were not there yet. My business partner, my former staff member, she's extremely talented, but she has a problem with conflicts. She kind of shuts down if there is a conflict. If there is a conflict, I must say that even at my late age, I jump into it. And basically, they were all sitting, we were all sitting around the table, and at the other side, the guy who was supposed to drive this process is killing everything. And I have around the table, the CEO was in Canada, I have like 15 people around the table, all the seniors of the company. At that point, I stood up and I said, well, it's interesting that you say so, because this means that this project is over. We can go home. And I'm not going to send you the invoice, because if you think like that, you don't have a future, and I'm not invoicing bankrupting companies. Keep your money to pay your severance packages. And the guy was completely in shock. Everybody was silent. I said, I think that and then one of the engineers, leader on the engineers, but do you think that we don't have a future? I think you have a future, but I think you need to do it yourself and make it happen yourself. And then we stayed friends with this, the head of engineering. Then the day after, it was a Saturday, I called the CEO and I said, and he said, yeah, I was expecting it, and there was a lot of clarification and turmoil. But to answer your question, this is a and my business partner was like, she was like, I don't know what you did. Because I really had a kind of 90 seconds. It's like when you play football, when I had an intuition that if I would not stop this, everything would fall apart. And then the people started again to work towards mapping and finding agreements and so on, and it worked fine. At the workshop, we had trigger cards. So this was a session with 25 people. We prepared before cards to distribute and to inspire. It's a very. We also did it in the Think in a Tank format that I showed you last week. But in the Think in the Tank, the cards were really geared to the metrics, and they were very personal. So what do you think is the future of the world? What do you think will be? What do you think? What's your name?
Iris.
Iris. So may I ask you, how old are you?
I'm 22.
Okay. How do you think your life will be when you are 52?
When I'm 52?
Yes. It's these kind of questions that were brought into the Think in a Tank workshop. Yeah. In this workshop, if I went to Marcel Wamsteker, the big guy you saw in the picture before, and I asked him, what do you think your life will be in 20 years? He would tell me to piss off. So we did very technical, content-related cards.
And where did they derive from, those cards? Did they just random technical words?
between this ear and this ear, there is a thing called brain, and that's where the card, not only mine, also
This
with
is random?
Karim. No, not random. It's based on what we know that matters.
In the technical industry.
Well, in the future scope of this industry. So circular economy is not something they think about every day, but we know. As consultant, one of the things when you work as a consultant, you get paid to know things. Therefore, we know as consultants that the circular economy is very important.
So they were targeted around environmental happenings?
No, they were targeted around, well, I have them at home. I should have brought them. Did you bring them? Why did you think about it? Why do I need always to
It's
talk?
not
Yeah,
necessary to show them.
No, I'm sorry, I have them at home. I actually, for me, this is a kind of toy that is really almost irrelevant. So, but they were mostly geared towards topics that were really, they could relate. They could start a conversation, because the purpose of the cards was to get them to start to work. It was not to inspire them, because I needed these 25 people to talk to each other, fundamentally.
Yeah.
That was my priority. 5 minutes, yeah. I'll take 10. I'm sure you can live with that. This is the strategy we did before that was all agreed. It was also coming out of a workshop of one day, where we used, this is their mother company, this is their mother company, Future Electronics. This is a mapping on innovation, where we used some dream companies like Google and 3M, and we used their direct competitors, and we scoped where they are, that's where they see, you see the logo, and where their aspiration should be. And this is all work we did before, so we had it, and it was all already agreed and distributed and discussed for 10 hours. It's not that I sit here and in 15 minutes I tell you this is the direction of the arrow. But after 10 hours in Amsterdam, in a room, we came up with an agreed and shared vision of their positioning. Yes?
What's the difference between cutting edge and innovative?
Well, this is a very old tool that comes from Philips. It was originally designed for product design purposes. You have a technological axis, where and you have a cultural axis. So you can have the Tesla is on the technological axis is at the top, but if you look at it as a car, it's designed like a normal car, so it would be here. Whereas the first Prius, when it came out in Japan, it was technologically very innovative, but it was also a totally different design. So it was used since the early 1990s to benchmark and to agree about the different position of products, product lines. Do I want my phone to look more eccentric, or do I want it to look more conservative, and so on? Well, we didn't have phones in the 90s. And let me add, it was a better word, but that's a different discussion. This is actually, they have a testimonial and they have an employer branding campaign. So we showed, I think we showed their message already for Frankfurt, which was related to the innovation roadmap and vision. The Foresight framework, we customized the metrics. Of course, the CEO knew the metrics because he used it at Philips, so that's part of the reasons we were there. We used the metrics to map their aspirations. You will see Arduino, you probably know Arduino. It's a company that has a platform where you can program. It's a little circuit with generic software, and you can program and you can make it into a remote control or any kind of device. We mapped their own projects to see where they were standing. Well, the map is always socio-cultural and sort of industry parameters. That's the principle that I showed last time. Then with the concepts, we let them work in teams. We used the cards, we used the sort of, that's an organizational framework that came out of an earlier workshop, but we also had a template where they had to describe their ideas. And this is all the work basically is the same approach that we used to have at Philips, and with my former staff member, she's using it in her company. They came up with around 25 ideas, something like that. Do you remember? Like there was a first round where they had all ideas like RENA, CO2 neutral, value chain, transparent track and trace. These were the first bits and pieces. You remember I told you the last time that in the workshop I would go to the tables, listen to what they said, to what were the bits and pieces. They came up with the first concepts with sketches, as you can see, very basic. We had a round that was based on quantity, just put out as many ideas as you can. And the second round where we went into quality to really be critical, so that they could diverge and converge. And then there was, that's me. We created clusters and we selected. These were the concepts, the ideas that survived. As you can see, there are like 15, 12. And they were then analyzed based on the, yes?
Sorry, how did you got from 25 to this small amount?
In the workshop, by letting them talk to each other and say this is good, this is not good. What's very important here, well, of course, you cannot, I cannot go to Frankfurt and say this is the future of lighting. So there must be some understanding of innovation in the industry. But what was very important here, and that's the reason why I present it to you, is that, I know it's late, yes, you come. What is very important to hear is the fact that this was a social process. They didn't pay me much. Then from my money I still had to pay him, and it's very expensive and demanding. But, because he deserves every penny. But the point is that I was not hired to give to the CEO the 4 bright ideas. I was hired to generate 4 bright ideas, and in the meantime fixing the company that was falling apart from a social point of view, from a point of view of trust, from a point of view of motivation, and so on. And then we have the final concepts. This is how they came out, described. And basically what you see here, we had an illustrator, a guy from Amsterdam, very smart guy who has a property, so he inherited a couple of houses from his grandmother, and he does the illustrator as a hobby, so he gave us a good price. And then what you have already seen. So what you have seen before, that is what the clients see. Yeah? Well, we are a bit late, but I think you factored that, if you're smart, and if you...
Knowing you, yes.
Exactly. Any question? They want a break.
Yeah, can you all just take a 5-minute break, and preferably don't discuss the project. Just go for a walk, use the bathroom, check your notifications, that kind of stuff. And then be back in 5 minutes.
You were supposed to be the nice guy. You are telling them what to do. It's unbelievable. Well, I'm really impressed. You grew up well in the last year. Yes. Now do as he says is right.
Okay.
Oh no.
Nie znaczy, że informacje w druku.
Yes.
Yes.
When you're bigger.
I think you should.
It's over. Yeah.
Mm.
So we basically have a research project
Yes.
for implementing imaginary into organization development or based on challenges. So last time I heard you were looking for this.
I was a long time ago. But the best thing is if you send me the description of the project that you have, I will send it around to a couple of people I know and ask them if there is one of my former clients who is now running an internal startup with 3D printing for digital lighting. It may be interesting for him. I work very close to a cultural organization. Very interesting for him.
So
Yes.
I'm gonna
Send me, you have my Gmail, huh?
So what do you want?
Wait.
Oh, email, yes.
What's your name? So if you write me. We'll click on it if you want. The best thing is if you send me information about the project, then I can. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, there's some chairs there in the back.
Hmm?
There's some low chairs in the back.
really?
Behind the couch. Doesn't matter. You really got tired this morning?
No.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, no, there's no way my boy did that. Tell me. This table? Here?
Each day now is like 48 hours with those. And you have to, oh, sorry, so then you can way back, it working. It working.
Was it nice reliving your story, Arena? You can be honest. He smiles says everything. It's like when he smiles, he has an extra one because like the mustache. Let's go off.
So talented, so demanding.
This table goes there?
Do you mind if we move the table a little bit?
Yes, of course. Sorry, just.
You do mind?
You do mind?
Do whatever you want. Mental breakdown. That's your like.
But they do like to
What do you think? Turning it on?
Yeah, because I want to sit on it.
Oh, I can't.
Actually, I'll put it to the side.
I want to sit here. Oh, yo, this is like a...
Yeah, it was weird.
Why would they make it like that?
So that you're not like stagnant the whole time. I think.
Oh my god.
Right.
A little bit more movement.
I was
more-
sleeping.
I think it's more ergonomic.
Really?
It feels much more comfortable.
Actually, that's a good point, because then you can sit wherever you want.
Right. Because if it's like this, it's like this is the only way, but this is really cool. What? Is this his chair?
No, man.
I'm assuming we're circling, right?
You would assume correctly.
Everything what he thought about me, about losing his presence, and I found it now.
Where was it?
In small bag, small, but I looked everywhere at home. And he just was like, how you could lost it in 2 days when they presented to you. I asked him for 1 year of it. And they lost it, and he was so angry.
It looks like it.
Yeah.
Ladies, can we come into the circle, please?
How are you? You're wide up.
I'm at every match.
That's fine. Yeah. Can you give me Yes, of course.
What do I see?
Very on the swirly chair?
This chair is amazing.
My wife bought one.
Really?
Yes.
What does your wife do?
Spend my money. Really don't have much experience of marriage as a consultant.
Me?
Yeah.
Not at all.
I don't worry, you will.
Actually, not sure I should be that excited.
Oh, it's fantastic. It's a journey.
Ladies, can we get started, please?
Right.
Basically, it's a journey from hunger to prosperity.
Felipe, can you pass one along? Or like, keep one pass along, please?
You can take one and pass it.
Okay, thank you.
What did you get? Oh, you didn't get a book.
No,
Marco, it's all between
I
us.
have my own book.
I don't know what they want.
So just grab one and pass it on.
It doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't matter. We're gonna talk about it a little bit in general.
Well,
I do need one volunteer just to keep time, considering that
No, I
it's been a
don't.
little bit tight. Does anybody have their phone on them right now?
I have a watch.
I'd like an alarm
Oh, yeah.
for those. Can you set a timer for 25 minutes?
Yep.
And then just completely distract us when the timer goes.
I will.
Some really random noise is perfect.
I can talk.
No,
It's not
that's okay. That's not necessary.
Okay, it's all now, so.
Thank you. So for the rest, phones please away, and let's keep that away for now. And I'll talk a little bit about what it was like for me coming out of the master's and getting this project with Marco. I was quite lucky because I already knew Marco in the bachelor's program, and he just texted me basically and said, I have a project, you want to be on it? And we were in conversation for I think a few months before we finally signed some papers. A lot of it was back and forth about negotiating price, And
No, he made a price. I told him that's a nice price, but this is what you get, and then he
And I
said
said
yes.
no, and then we met halfway
All
at some point.
Sure, that's how it went.
So the first little block, I just want to spend a little bit of time going into the story of how it was like for me. You don't like the chair?
No, I
I
like.
think
I'll
it's next
take
week.
it.
So
It's just like 25 minutes going into what it was like as an alumni, trying to trying to position myself in the market and trying to get jobs and contracts and that kind of stuff. I'll take another 5-minute break after that, and then we're going to go into some more dynamic workshops. As I'm talking about this, you're holding some books. And these books, when I came out, were important for me because it helped me understand and sort of create the mindset that I needed to, one, work with Marco, but also work with this project so I understood what I was actually dealing with. I felt I had a gap. There was some knowledge that I was missing when I was coming out. And somewhere in these books I managed to get some of that knowledge. Take like 30 seconds. Flip through pages, look at the back cover, read a little bit, just familiarize yourself in any way with the book. And they might seem completely irrelevant, that's fine. If you don't have a book, I think there's something. Ah, you have Marco's book as well. Yeah.
You're right.
You want to share that one as well?
I knew you were going to say that.
It's not a coincidence.
It's funny, I feel like I'm losing one of these things.
I know. I told you a long time ago. So these are just some of them, some of the other important books that helped me a lot. I shared them and they haven't come back yet. So a really good book is This Human by Melissa Nova. It's a really interesting one just about presenting yourself in the market and talking to clients, different ways of communicating. When I was brought on board by Marco, he spent a lot of time positioning me. I didn't know necessarily how I was being introduced until I met them in like November 2016, 17, something.
2 words. Basically, Breche Fissers, the other consultant, and I'm the godfather of the first child, who is now a goalkeeper in the KNVB, future lead. And so basically, we are not only a team in business, but we are also very close friends in life. And when I brought him on board, we specifically didn't want him to be a kind of assistant, but we wanted him to really have a role in the project and to bring his own point of view and his own value. So there was an intent from our side not to hire a DTPer, but to hire him as a consultant, being aware of the distance between, if you bring any of those books in Zundert, they shoot you before you pass the city border, because they really don't understand these things. They think about selling stuff. So we were aware that there was a gap, but we also had the intent and the kind of drive to bring his contribution as an added value.
So me coming into the project, I was introduced to the group basically how I'm being introduced right now. There was a meeting, Marco and I shook some hands, and we had a pizza. Like 10 minutes later, we had some lunch together with them. Marco from the get-go was like, you need to be observing, you need to be looking for cues, you need to be trying to analyze and figure out what this team, what this group looks like, understand the group dynamics. It was a little tricky at the beginning because I was just super nervous. It was my first project that I was and Marco was quite intimidating sometimes. Sometimes. after that, a lot of the meetings that I was doing was just with Marco and Brechia. We were trying to plan, we were trying to strategize, figure out what to do, and Marco did a lot of letting me speak up and what I wanted to say and what ideas that I had from Imagineering, things that I wanted to introduce. But something that I didn't fully understand for myself was the expectations that Marco had of me. Was I supposed to be someone very strategic, operational, or was it more tactile? Was I more in the facilitation? Was I creating concepts? Or was I thinking about the overarching project? And in the end, it was more operational. So again, he's the godfather in the project. He's the the godfather in the project. He was more strategically involved with Brechia. So he had a very deep insight into what was going on, and I was kind of given the research afterwards. I didn't have to do much of that. What I mostly did was the idea generation, the ideation part. Where's the game storming book? The game storming book is what I looked into to get the ideas for what I could use. I had to look online for other things as well, and in the end I actually used something that I was taught in the Alumni Masters by Geoff Marais, I think his name is. He did this like face thing where we had to draw our faces upside down. Did he do it with you guys as well? And that was something I proposed to Marco, and he really trusted me on that because it was a very different thing to do, alternative thing to do for this company. It was something very new. And when it came down to what we were at the
Golf club.
Coffee club?
Golf.
We were at the golf club, and we were doing this this workshop. This is the day that the ideas are supposed to, this is the final day basically for us to make it happen. I remember how at the Masters when we were doing it, it was a lot of fun. Like it was 60 seconds and we were laughing and giggling and we were looking at each other's, and it was playful during this whole time. And so I started the timer, hit 60 seconds, and the entire room went silent, and nobody spoke. And it got really focused, and I got really nervous, because I was like, oh shit. I'm sorry, we're not allowed to use that word. I was like, oh darn.
You can use the F word if you're pregnant.
Fudge, and darn it, and dang it. And so I got really anxious and nervous during that time. It was like the longest 60 seconds of this entire project that I was dealing with. I looked over at Marco and he was looking at me like he was gonna kill me or something. He was just so angry because it wasn't really working. Of course not. So Brechia and Marco in the corner there, everybody's here, 30 seconds are still going, and they're having some discussion over there, and I'm like, oh crap, is this gonna work? Is this gonna work? And 10 seconds go by, and something Geoff said was add some extra time, it'll build rapport. So I said, okay, I'll give you an extra 10 seconds or something like that. So I added an extra 10 seconds, and then I started saying 5 seconds, 4 seconds, 3 seconds. And then one of the guys who Marco mentioned before, the guy who got very rowdy during the project, he said, this isn't gonna work, this is all la la la. He shut up again and he said, you're stressing us out. And I thought, oh no. And it hit 2 seconds, 1 second, and then pens down. And the entire room erupted in laughter. And people were just laughing, they were sharing, they were looking, and they were like, this is just silly, this is ridiculous. And I looked at Marco and he looked at me and I was like, oh, okay, it's all right. But because there was so much anxiety going in me at that moment, I wasn't able to make the next step. So they just done this workshop and it's fun, but they need understanding of what the hell they're actually doing. But I was quite shaken about what was just going on, that I didn't really know how to piece it back together for them and show some understanding. And Marco caught on to that. I was really lucky about that. He saw that I wasn't able to kind of weave that red thread for them, and he took over immediately and consolidated that information to them.
Two things when you are in this kind. Basically, I'm a very appreciative person.
Sorry. I'm on camera. My bad.
You bring this respectfulness to all new level. I'm a very appreciative person, but when you are in this kind of workshops, you are in Vietnam, basically. And a very important component is the speed that you have in, and for me it's very natural also with the other consultant who was on the job, but I don't have a problem because I don't have this kind of feelings of anxiety and things. I have them always, but accepted when I should have them. So it's very natural, and to be honest, I always trusted him. The only thing, the first time we met in Amsterdam with Brechje, and we were discussing the workshop, and said, well, what would you like? Do you have anything to add? What should we tell them? And he said, well, we should tell them to come to the workshop with an open mind. And I was like, Jesus, I'm going to visit a coffee shop now. I didn't think of that. So, but that was a kind of a first moment. And there is one thing, because at the end they really acknowledged him and they really appreciated him. And he really brought his own contribution. But I think, so there was a lot of value in everything that Karim did. There is one moment where he delivered the kind of value you cannot pay for. So valuable it is. And it was during a previous workshop.
I was going to get to
Yeah.
this.
Okay, then you tell the story. But just give them a signal, tell them this is the golden moment, the golden crossroad. Go ahead.
But just after this whole face drawing thing, we needed to find a way to kind of bring the group back together. And we did an exercise called complementing competencies. And basically they wrote down their name, they wrote down their competencies that they thought they shined in. And then we asked everyone to take silly stickers and hearts and all these random things that you just went around and you complimented and resonated with. Oh, yeah, I see this in myself as well, or I see that in you as well. And at the end of the day, we had a huge wall of all these faces, and we had a bit of a matrix and a web that showed how connected the group actually was with each other. And this was put on the wall so that they could continuously see this during. The idea that this might bring a little bit more cohesion in the group. So that was the main contribution that I felt I had, but Marco has a different opinion.
That was the best contribution in consulting terms, but in terms of insight, that's the one he's going to tell you. Now you're curious, huh?
So Rewind, we did 2 workshops. The first workshop was here in Breda. It was just behind the FAM, whatever the hell we are right now. Anyway,
Yeah,
by the station. And it was about an 8-hour workshop. Marco is talking about strategy, and we're trying to figure out how to support them in figuring out what innovation actually is and where we're trying to go. So we needed to warm them up to innovation, basically. What's that look like? And Marco talked about the 5 managers. They became 2 managers, and so these 2 managers are in the workshop as well. One Marco is very close with, one Marco isn't so close with. And as it turned out, he'd been to my yoga class.
Yes.
Every time, so at this point Marco had told me just observe, figure out what you see, tell me what you see, what I'm not seeing, etc. And what I did, or what I saw, was one of the managers, the one specifically that Marco wasn't on 100% terms with, who wasn't going back and forth on having coffees and stuff with. He was a very visual thinker, so he would just take notes, and everything that he was doing was this incredible masterpiece of like a visual map of notes. It was like he was drawing faces, and those faces represented something that somebody had said, and it was just very intricate. But when Marco spoke, when this other guy spoke, and when the other manager spoke, I noticed that he would take a pen and he would just start dotting, and something would keep happening, and then on the paper there would just be this cloud of dots. And I told Marco this insight, apparently this was the magic
the thing is that when you are in the lead in a workshop, you might not notice all details. But basically, this guy had a nervous reaction when his competitor, his internal competitor, the other joint CEO was talking. He had a kind of nervous reaction. And the same nervous reaction he had when I was talking. And my question before that, and I didn't notice because I was busy with talking and playing the orchestra and so on. When he came to me and he whispered this in my ear, at that moment I knew, because I was hired by the other joint CEO, but I didn't have a clear position in my mind how this second joint CEO was feeling about the project, the consultancy, the construction, and so on. And that for me was the information I was missing. You cannot pay for an information like this. And it's not something that McKinsey or anybody who works on a positivist mindset would deem as valuable. But that's exactly, I am always looking for, I trust very much my manager here. I didn't know him. We had a situation where he sent me to talk to some people. Things didn't turn out as he expected, as we agreed. When I informed him, he was, yeah, but this is outrageous, and his muscle here started to flip. I looked at him, I said, well, now that I see your muscle flipping, I know that you're really outraged at heart. You're not selling me some bullshit, but you really believe what you say. So from now on, I completely trust you. So I'm really looking for this kind of, Sigmund Freud was calling them the lapsus, the little tics. These are the most valuable indicators of where the person in front of you really stands. And also another thing that nobody will tell you to do, but listen to the impression that you have, to the feeling that you get from looking at the posture of the other person, at the way they are sitting and the way they are looking. And ultimately, if you see somebody new and in 60 seconds you get the feeling you don't trust them, most likely you are right not to trust them. But this kind of information, this kind, look, I picked this up. For me, that's being a major milestone in the relationship, because I knew that this guy saw me as completely associated with the other guy, and I knew that this guy was not friendly. He would not embrace the project. He would live with it, but he would not embrace it.
So for me, that kind of rounds off the Reina project, and there were some conversations afterwards just about how it went and things between me and Marco, and I've seen him a couple times after that. But actually coming into the working field, it's not every chance you get that somebody just hands a project to you, and actually trying to get these projects or contracts in sort of real life was and still is quite challenging. I'm working on one project that I'm basically in conversation with for about a year now, since February, January, and there's been nothing to show for it. And I've been on the phone with Marco about it, and he's like, you should have quit like ages ago. If you're not going to get paid for this thing, just get out immediately.
Yeah.
So on an advisory basis, I'm still in contact with Marco about things, but trying to set up my own projects. I'm self-employed, I started my own company, I teach yoga, I give mindfulness, also do energetic therapy. And to build the community, or to build what I'm trying to build with the vision that I have, I needed a platform to actually talk to the CEOs and talk to the people that I want to talk to. For me, it's ridiculous that there's so much burnout in the world right now. It's just, it's absolutely crazy that there's so much anxiety and burnout, especially even in the school situations during thesis periods and things. That really broke my heart when I was studying here. And we would get things like, oh no, don't worry about it, that's just part of it. It's like, no, like absolutely not. I can't stand behind that. But I couldn't really say this. Like what Marco said, if I took any one of these books into Reina, they would just laugh and basically walk away stressed. We don't have stress, we're not stressed. It's not a stress, that's not something we have. And I needed a platform to actually be able to talk to these people. So I started teaching yoga classes, and my yoga classes are basically my platform where I get an hour, maybe a week, sometimes more, 3, 4, 5 hours a week with CEOs of really big companies that go to these like elite yoga studios, which is, it's not really the point, you know, but there I can talk about wellness, I can talk about stress, I can talk about the things that I think are really important and build the relationship that I'm trying to build. From there, when what's happening now is those CEOs or those operations managers, the marketing directors, are then talking to me to do privates and sessions with me. And from that, we're looking at getting into the companies to see if I can offer yoga for them, mindfulness, is it energetic therapy, is it something else, just a little bit more operational than just an actual one-on-one with somebody. From there, the idea is to create a bit of a more community, which is why Felipe is here. He's my go-to guy about creating communities and creating and communicating my thoughts, because I tend to be somebody who's very abstract in my ideas, but I struggle a lot with making it tangible for the person in front of me. And that's what he's been helping me with for the past, I don't know, what has it been, like a
year and a half?
A year and a half right now. He does media and entertainment, he does content, online videos, he has some fantastic things, and from his videos I've probably had the most, the biggest platform to communicate with people, because they'll see this and for some reason that resonates, and it's just the way that he's able to capture things is just fantastic. The way he's brought me into content has been a very long process. He knows he's probably up here when it comes to content and I'm down here, and he's been slowly working me up to a point where I understand the concepts that he's talking about and why content and why communicating in this way is so important. You know, we've been talking, I think, for more than a year and a half. In any case, we've been friends for much longer than that. And something that's been really interesting, which I think is very important from here, is his way of pricing, his way of communicating, his way of negotiating. It's, you know, he'll tell me literally what he's doing, and he's doing it to me, and I'll still want to buy what he's talking about. And I'm just like, how did he convince me to? And then he'll try to piece it, and I won't understand what he's talking about, but I'm getting there a little bit.
Well, there is one comment on the thing that he said about being in touch with companies for a year and nothing comes out of it. I have been myself, I am a bit sentimental about Italian companies from my hometown. So I really like when I'm there, if I go there 3 days, I always reserve 1 day to meet companies and to keep up seeing business-related people. I've been in touch for 18 months with a startup. At first, this guy wanted to give me 10% of the shares. I made for him during August 2018. I worked out for him the kind of branding platform for the company. He's an engineer, so he has no idea. Then the shares were not feasible, but maybe introductions, then maybe this, maybe that, European tender. A year went by. After a year I told him, well, we are not profitable, so goodbye. No, I have an investor. Then there was an investor. After 18 months, I told him, look, it's very simple. I know things, and I sell this knowledge. I need from you a budget, goals, a set of goals, and a timeline. And you must be able to pay 50% of this budget up front. Do you have a budget? No. Call me when you have a budget. He didn't call me since. But normally, if a company talks to you, and that's really a recommendation for you, building up to what Karim said, if a company talks to you for 1 year, unless they are the company of your cousin, and therefore you want to help because of family reasons, if they talk to you 1 year and they don't have 5,000 euros to pay you immediately, it means that either they are broke or they are brain picking you. They are exploiting you for free. And the thing, I had a guy from Singapore who works in luxury yachts, vice president of marketing. He once told me, well, you know, creative ideas should come for free. And creative ideas are your core business. So be very careful, because you will find a lot of clients who actually burn your time, make you work on PowerPoints and presentations, and don't pay you. You need to have, everybody has their own limit.
Yeah, and can you cut?
Yes, but you need to set for yourself. I talk to you 6 months, I talk to you 6 weeks, I talk to you 18 months. if there is not a budget, a brief, a down payment of 50%, and the timeline to deliver, there is nothing.
So, okay, first section's over. Take another 5-minute break, whatever you want to do. We're going to come back and do a second session that's a little bit more dynamic, called a stinky fish. If you have questions that are in your mind right now, hold on to those questions and bring them into the stinky fish workshop. Try not to share too much with other people about what your questions are just yet. And yes, please, 5 minutes. And then we'll be back here again.
Put on lock.
You may go to the toilet.
You want to check your phones or whatever.
Let's go. Let's go get some coffee or something.
Yes.
Can I do that?
Do we need to go downstairs to the coffee or do we have enough
Yes,
space?
I'm breathing easily, thank you.
I need coffee.
Yeah.
Oh, it's okay. If you want to look at it, it's fine.
You need a card or what?
I have no idea.
Let's figure it out. You're smart people. You can do this.
Every day one copy?
Yes, that way.
You don't feel like going back? Yes, and then you start talking to the I didn't
Do you have also the employee,
That's employee card?
Yeah, it's like, almost like.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I also did coffee before, but like, even once.
What's the
They don't need it.
No.
They don't need it.
Yeah, that's okay.
When I like went through the book, the first thing I went to was like a chapter about like how people love rocks.
Really?
Yeah, it's like through like art and history and people who like they love rocks.
Also rock climbing and stuff?
No, I think it was like paintings of rocks for like boulders and things. Like, yeah, all along history.
My book was about the
Rock.
rock. My book was about Buddha.
Oh,
Also about his mindset.
This is
Yoga?
yoga?
Yeah.
practical yoga psychology.
That's from Buddha, I think. Yeah, I had another one. It's also from Buddha.
It sounds interesting to teach yoga classes to CEOs.
Yeah,
And then
that's.
you hypnotize
Yeah.
them. You will buy my full course.
Yeah.
yeah.
Curious if he was a yoga teacher before that,
Yeah.
or if he did it
Yeah.
to do this.
That's a good question.
I said you're most ingenious.
I'm gonna do yoga.
Oh,
It's like he's not in the marketing department, he's a marketing, he's looking for a new job.
Did you ever
So,
do?
according to your letter, they're
I don't think I've ever done like a proper class. Yeah, but I've done a lot where I've just opened a YouTube video. Like
Yeah.
trying to.
It's like harder
I don't
than
know,
you
you
think.
did it right.
Oh man, I know. I only did the beginner ones because I saw the one where it's someone's leg.
Yeah.
Where there's ones where you're like, it's like, you know, can you do all of that? Have you done that? It seems like, yeah, if you can do all of it, you're really strong. You
Yeah.
have to be really balanced,
Yeah.
coordinated, strong.
Yeah.
It's like for break dancing.
Good question.
Yeah, it is.
It's like wishes for any business around. is the idea of the curtain theater? Some people idea. Or the same,
She was old.
Yes.
I know.
Business. These people is there.
It's alright.
Now we're going a little bit deeper into the session, right? That's what the stinky fish was.
That's the idea. The smelly ass fish.
Yeah.
Your stickers.
I read through the email.
My brother.
I'm so prepared.
You two should
Let's talk.
I think you would do great on camera, Marco.
I have been trained.
I
I don't do great on camera. It's not that I don't do great like that. I do great because I know how to do great.
Can we come together again?
I'll be the judge of that.
Be my guest.
Let's do it.
My dad is from Amsterdam. My mom is from Tanzania. And I grew up in the Middle East.
Wait, do you speak Dutch? You're like, okay.
Yeah, it's fully.
Yeah, you can't hear the
Integrate.
accent, so I was curious.
He has the skills.
Nice, except to speak Dutch properly.
You speak Arabic.
I used to. I can like kind of read the alphabet these days, but it's been so long.
And when did you graduate?
From here or from 2017? Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
They want to start again.
Can we, ladies, can we come again?
I think,
Yeah, we have a business meeting.
Yeah,
And we need to leave third.
Okay. Anybody else have like other appointments that they need to get to? No, that's fine. If you have your questions kind of written down, maybe just grab them for a second. If you have them in your head, that's totally fine as well. So I asked Stephanie a while back when I called, I was asking what was going on a little bit about in the group, and I also asked some of the other alumni that I graduated with what were questions that they had around this time of the year, and I came down to 3 questions that they had, that I had as well. And the idea behind a stinky fish, we all have one, and the stinky fish is basically that thing you don't really want to talk about, something you don't necessarily want to share, but the longer you hide your stinky fish, the stinkier it gets, the more flies get attracted, and the worse off the group is because it smells really bad. And the idea is to get to your stinky fish through these questions that you have written down based on what the story was that I just told, based on what you heard from Marco. And I'd just like to open that discussion a little bit. Are there any questions, or does anybody want to share a question they might have from the conversation just now? Everything is so good.
I have a question.
Sure.
What if I feel like I already dealt with this uncomfortable thing some time ago, and I don't really want to kind of live through it again? If I'm not comfortable doing that, is there any advice?
So you mean in the face of a situation, you feel uncomfortable, like confrontation, for example, and how do you deal with anxiety in that moment, or what do you mean?
Yeah, I just want to relieve the bad memories I have about my stinky fish.
I think it's a great analogy. Okay. Other questions? You're just gonna keep asking the questions and get them out.
I have a question actually about how to read such kind of those small things, but it's in the what you see the muscles.
Muscles.
Yeah.
So how to see twitches and
Yeah, yeah.
muscle behavior? Okay, that's a valid question. Any other questions?
Maybe how to start talking about possible projects with possible prospects.
Could you elaborate just a bit?
Well, if you talk to application companies, you have your thesis, so it's like it's like a closed off element. What if you're trying to start an open project, or maybe with an indefinite ending point, or how do you start those conversations with the companies? How do you start talking to people that are unaware of Imagineering about Imagineering in a professional way?
Okay.
That it profits them as well. Makes sense.
Other questions?
Did you have some sessions which failed? And what
Good
did you do
question.
in that situations? How to start it again? Because yes, we all can say that you need to be energetic and we can do mistakes, but in real life, if you had something as an example, it would be nice to hear, I think.
Also a good question. Why are you laughing?
No. If you will invite me, I will try.
Not yet. we only have 20 minutes.
No, but
You.
it's,
Yeah, sure.
20 minutes, right?
Yeah. Next question.
I'm curious about how you navigate situations where there might be competition within teams or competing priorities between different group members, and how you kind of balance that out.
Good question. Any other questions? I'd like everybody just at least have one question to pitch in. Felipe?
I think how do you, like, okay, let's say you have a stinky fish, but admitting it might mean that your business is over, or that that project you wanted to work on will not go through, or that that friend you're really good, you'll have to sacrifice that. How do you get yourself over that bump of, okay, let's talk about it, and
Yeah.
does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, for me it does, so I shouldn't say yeah.
I like that question. Can I?
Hook on to that question, yeah. Are there other questions?
If you're unsure, at least if I look at myself, I would be quite unsure if I would find work that really like, satisfies, like you're happy with it. How do you deal with this uncertainty, unsure feeling?
That's a good question. We've talked about that quite a bit, actually.
Absolutely.
There's a muzzle to put on. Other questions?
Yeah, you told us that you were a bit insecure in the beginning with new projects, so how did you overcome your fear and became more confident?
You assume that I overcame it.
You didn't?
He did.
Okay.
No.
How do you deal with it then?
That's a good question. So other questions?
Yeah, I think I have the same question as Manu. Like, I'm not sure what I want to do after this.
Yeah, I had that question too. I almost quit the masters halfway through.
Yeah, me too.
Hey. Same things.
And me.
And I had a question with me too, but difference is like I don't know what to look for in a potential company. Is it for a project or for something else? Like, it's kind of tricky for me to figure out myself.
Okay.
Another one?
Yeah?
Maybe a very commercial one. How do you price yourself?
Yeah, that's your guy right here.
Yes.
We'll get to that.
And we're gonna get to that. But that's a really good question. Really good. Marco. Anybody else?
How to not be intimidated by someone who's like,
You work with Marco
Yeah.
for a while. You have to deal with
I
it.
was a piece of cake. Only had to get you in line once. Only once.
It's been a long process.
It's been one phone call, 20 minutes, and then things were clear.
I remember that. Anyway, next question.
No, I had an idea about that most of us don't know what to do after master. but I think most of us also know the at least direction where we want, but how to apply it in real life, because we all want to change the world, but how to apply it, to formulate these ideas.
Thank you.
Well, to build on this, how to change the world while you pay for your toilet paper and
Was that a
groceries.
necessary comment?
Make it business-wise, commercially sustainable.
Couldn't have just said the commercially sustainable part?
I could, but it would not be on tape in the same iconic way.
Next question.
Maybe how do you build these relationships? Because Marco was talking about how he was brought into RENA, right? But this was a 20-year-old relationship with one of the CEOs. Yet this person who was in trouble 20 years later thought, oh, I need to talk to Marco. It's not how it went down?
No, it went that I was broke, it was September, I needed money, I was desperate, I looked on LinkedIn and I saw that Erwin became CEO of RENA.
Okay.
So I wrote to him, should we have a coffee? That's how it went. And then
And here we are.
the thing came up. But if I didn't, if I had not been desperate to pay for the toilet paper, the whole thing would have not existed. The whole world-changing project.
Good question, please. Other questions?
Well, I have a question. So you're negotiating with a client or a potential clients, and they already have a fixed idea of what you should do, and you want to please them, but you also know that things could be different, or that you have all this knowledge about engineering, and you think that this could help them, but they don't really accept it that well. So how can you introduce, your ideas very smoothly into the conversation? So kind of
Fantastic.
hypnosis or something.
Uh,
Hypnotize a client.
I wouldn't drop hypnosis into it. Sorry, are there any other questions? Yeah.
For Imagineering as an intervention, do you think what time do you think is the best for a company as a startup or like a mature company, or when it's going like having a lot of challenges?
That's a really interesting one, and that has a lot of answers to it. I'm not sure I or we can fully answer that one in the time that we have, but I mean, you can contact me, we can talk about it. That's a really good one. Other questions? Chance? I thought this was a hand coming. So there were three main questions that I got. The first one was when I was talking to Stephanie as well, but also the other alumni and some of the questions that I had. How do I present myself as an Imagineer? The other one is how do I manage expectations of clients and myself? And how do I communicate services and price? And from what it sounds like, these are somehow related to the questions that were in the room just now. If they're not, please let's talk about it. I want to spend the next couple minutes just defining three big questions that we have that can maybe answer all of the questions, or the more root questions that are at play right now. Feel free to talk to each other about it. Feel free to think by yourself. If you want to open up a discussion, that's absolutely fine. If you want to write on the board, that's cool too. But like, how much time do we have?
We have 12 minutes.
Sound like the NS lady? 12 minutes.
Try my best.
So maybe 5 minutes. Just take 5 minutes and try to compile one question each. And then we'll see if we can get 3 group questions, and that'll set us up for the next session that we're going to go into.
Can you read your questions one more time?
Sure thing. The first one is, how do I present myself as an Imagineer? Question mark. The second question is, how do I manage expectations of clients and myself? The third one is, how do I communicate my services and price? And if you need me to elaborate a little bit about these questions and stuff, just say so, and we can dig a little bit deeper into those as well.
So
Yeah, it's
you
better
want
now.
us now to create 3 main questions altogether? One question.
So what'll happen at the end, in the next session, is Marco, Felipe and I will split up, and we'll each take one question, and we'll have a bit of an interview where you can go as a group. You'll go to either Marco, him, or me, and we'll try to answer that question for you as best as we can in 10 minutes. It might be a one-on-one interview that you have with us. It might be 1-on-3, it might be 1-on-2, it depends, okay? But we need, eventually, at the end of this whole session right now, 3 big questions that need to be answered.
Dun dun dun.
So,
No, I just wondered. I would look for
No.
computer cases and features.
Concrete cases about what?
Yeah, the kind of supplies and tools you use to stand and their stuff.
Either pricing thing.
That's something I would love to hear now.
You're okay with the expectations, right? Yeah.
Just then
I
you
really have no idea.
Yeah, we're performing yes.
You're familiar with it.
No, but
Every
like,
ability to bullshit myself.
this is, I think, I'd like to share something, is the moment that I knew Marco was like good people was the first class I ever had with Marco, Leisure Direction.
With total
And so we're doing this like project and we'll talk about like ethics or something. Project. And I can't remember what exactly the content about it was. And I was like, I said something like, well, we can't look at it because that's not it. And I called him on that. I mean, for the first time I was saying, that's a good point.
Oh,
We later then had a sort of like a mock meeting, basically a mock meeting, where I was the director and there was I had like a sales lady next to me, and I started talking and trying to pitch this project to this other team. And then Marco ends it and he looks at me and he goes, "You really have a talent for bullshit." Like in the middle of the whole.
Oh, Sam.
Oh, the
Oh, that's a
group.
whiteboard? Oh, that is so handy. Yo, these people are really a team, man. It's really
Gotta
good.
get it going.
They're like on fire, man. Yeah.
I told you that.
Man, this is very cool.
How did you come for that? What else?
Maybe, you know,
I also really want to know.
I have already decided the music for my funeral. Beethoven and Eroica.
To go with Lady Gaga, just to throw everybody out. Rah, rah.
The last, it would be the
last
second
song.
movement of the 7th or something.
You have more markers?
The center would be the funeral march of the 3rd symphony, and for the last one I was thinking something more upbeat, so maybe Leonard Cohen or something. Maybe I will write down in my last week that you give the speech.
I'm gonna go mess them up a little bit. I'm gonna go mess them up.
So now we just create 3 names for a lot of.
That was not decided.
The price, the price, yeah, because everything else, people.
I would appreciate that since last week.
the machine.
Oh, okay, so try that on the ground floor because that was a
I go to the
Yes, you were saying?
everything that we tried as students in the classroom, our workshops, right? Yes, everybody immediately engages and they are, that's how I do this, and really put themselves in their
Cheers,
chairs.
pounds.
But then when
How to negotiate
because we
and
have
what
kind of the
you're-
same.
what are you worth?
We're like-minded, we are open to experiment, to get out of our comfort zone, go to organization. It's completely different. Not changes not in their minds, actually an uncomfortable thought. And so there's barrier and you have the energy and you think everybody will just immediately come. Yeah, like what he's saying with the portrait upside down. Because people have fun with it and they are actually getting tense.
Crazy, yeah.
It's a bit, so
No,
tiny
but
seeds.
that's specifically why I work in boards, because I personally, I realized this before I even like started school, and I always wanted to figure that part out because it's such a, like I said, like very broad and very difficult topic. And for me, like I used to film it, I realized I can learn from
the assumption is
this
we
book,
already have a project or
but talking, the relationship,
except for that
talking about price, those are things that you don't learn in a textbook, right? So how do you,
getting
and that's something I've gotten very savvy.
confident, not necessarily
And it's actually pretty simple when you think about it. It's just, I feel like it takes a lot of practice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like it's simple,
Yes,
but
good
it's
point.
hard. Yeah.
Is it like everybody to define as
Yes.
work also for approvals, but as
Russia.
an external company?
How's the project going?
Which one?
I don't know, you guys are on a project now.
We are on different projects now, but it's okay. It's okay, but just hard to find applications out there. And they have now teams with support from our teachers. I meet with different teachers to understand what they need.
Actually make people
Because
do what you want.
I think that it's, when we're talking about engineering, it's too wide and too general. And when you're working on I'm trying to figure out what I need and what I want to do.
Lots of
It's hard. It's difficult. It's harder than I got to when I used to do in economics, and it's easy. You need strategy, you need profit, you need business plan, and that's all. And now you are just doing it. We need everything.
Do you already feel like one of the questions on the board are in line with what you need to answer?
No.
One of them were really open for us to do this preliminary research.
If to be honest, I know on the way it's personal,
very specific.
you know, because I appreciate what we have now, but sometimes I need to add things about me. So when we did it before, yes, it was more general, but now you will talk about me and you will give some answers to my question, yes, it will be useful. But now I just want to receive information how
How can we do it? How can we try to
So we're gonna start off.
maybe have less people to talk because
I
we
can
remember
make it
we had like 4 sessions with people who went to
That's also a big thing, because it's not
focus groups and everything.
important to yourself.
Seems like we
It's more important to yourself and who am I?
Yes.
on that part. But
Express,
then the next one,
communicate.
but instead of 4, we just talked
And then you
about
get the client.
one.
Yes, but
That doesn't
also,
mean
Clients,
yeah.
Right.
I don't just come here from 3 to 5 and I'll try to get some people here.
I'm not sure that I
in the room and you
want
talk like that.
work as a survey
Open up your process.
and it's like how I can go inside the organization and do something there to work with them and go deeply in this organization, not only I will have here
So if I have an idea, I can say, look, I have this idea, and I'd like to test it out. And basically, they'll draft a job description for you.
because
They'll say,
we.
like,
Yeah,
this is a job description.
And then I say,
I'll
okay,
take
well,
this
let's
here,
do
this, whatever it is that you want to do in the company to see if it'll
So
work.
you turn the situation
Because you have
to the point where they're trying to do what you
should have the support of a bigger company.
That's a
And if you want to
Right, but it's
or you
not
can leave after the
them
2-year period and
realize,
apply that somewhere else.
right, what it is they want from
Corporate
the
venture.
business, and not, I can offer you this.
So can we come back to the circle?
Yes, of course. And also, we expect
Corporate
a
venture.
product that is already very defined when you propose it. So if you're open to say, well, I will investigate, and then I will do
Yes, of course.
design, they're also not agree with
So
that,
a good
because there was
question.
something very concrete. I will workshop about this,
Felipe.
it's gonna be like this.
I'll say, thank you.
Go get you.
Thank you very
Sugar.
much. Oh, no worries, it's fine.
No, I get you.
We have sugar here around the corner.
I know.
Okay, sorry. We used to teach here for years, but you're the ones who didn't know. I messed it up.
We'll get back to that.
So in this whole story, do we have 3 questions? Because I see a lot of questions.
Well, there are 3 themes,
Uh-huh.
and then because
I see
we're
the
going to be
themes.
interviewing you, there are, I thought like,
Now I'm starting to get sweaty, Marco. Getting interviewed.
Yeah, for
20
sure.
minutes for one question is a bit much, so.
I mean, in an interview, there's more than one question for sure. But, so we have general questions, an idea of where we want to go.
And I think your questions are the
Yeah.
ones that we kind of want to.
Do your homework. There was a good comment made here. Do you want to share, actually, what we were just talking about?
Yes, we just we were talking about that these questions sometimes they're too general, and as for me, I'm on that step when I want to hear answers personal, because it's like we have understanding, but it's my desire to listen advice personal. And we also were talking about that I want to work not as a self-employed consultant, but I want to go deep in the company, but I don't know what I can do. So I have some direction, but actually I'm not sure that to company it will be useful or to me it will be useful. And we had an idea to discuss with all together, also with someone who will be interested in it, because there is a company who can help with it, right?
There's a business structure which you can call a corporate venture, which you can do as if it's a self-employed person or you have an idea. You can go and propose your idea to a company and say, hey, look, this is what I would like to do with you guys. I'm not entirely sure how it would look like, but let's trial this for a year or 2. Then you're kind of hired by the company, you list out a sort of job description, and you can test out your idea if you have a good relationship with them for some time. After that 2-year period, you could then leave the company, take your idea and start your own company, or you could stay there and keep working and developing and creating something and maybe hire some other people to work under you. So we're just talking about how she might be able to do that as well. So there's a lot of different ways that you can make money out of Imagineering. The main thing that I'd like to get across is it doesn't help for me to try to sell Imagineering at all. With the people that I'm talking to, just that conversation, it's not necessary. To say that I have a piece of paper that says Imagineering, it's nice and it opens a conversation, but I still need to have a conversation after that, an entire dialogue. And in my experience, up until now, the people that are interested in actually working with me are interested in working with me, not Imagineering. Hence, Marco is interested in working with me, Felipe, with me. It's all about me. And once that idea gets a little bit settled in, it makes it a lot easier to then communicate what you actually want to communicate and how you want to present yourself in the market. So So thank you for that question. It was a fantastic question.
But
Thank you.
in general terms, nobody knows what Imagineering is. In Canada, where I went, they still ask me, a partner university for years, can you tell us what it is about? So that is not like getting a master degree in building Maseratis, because everybody knows what a Maserati is, everybody knows whether they want one or not. And if you all have a diploma in building Maserati, and I want a Maserati, I'll come to you because of the diploma. But I think in the present market circumstances, that's an advantage. Because you can build, what you need to be these days. Somebody was asking whether the startup or the corporation, it was you. Anybody who pays the bills. If it's a startup, if it's a corporation, as long as it's legal, ethic, and it corresponds to your values, that's the right company to work for, if they can pay the bills. Sorry, I'm a bit brutal. But as based on this master, you don't go there and say, I have a master in building Maseratis and maybe they want bicycles. You have a portfolio of competencies and skills, appreciative inquiry, and you make it fit on the basis of your relational power, the way he presents himself with his gestures and with that is a very powerful means of communication. Then you can build from the Imagineering portfolio the project and tailor it to the needs of the CEO or the vice president you have in front.
Marco, this is what I would really like Marco to touch on in the next session.
Yes.
So if you're going to go with Marco in a bit of an interview, he'll be managing sort of the expectations, the one on the right, and how you manage your own expectations, how you manage your clients' expectations. He's fantastic at this. And he's managing me, managing himself, and the group and stuff. So, sorry to cut you off.
But it's
how much time do we have, actually?
Nothing.
We have nothing?
Yeah.
Oh.
Sure.
You want me to set another
I thought the 20 minutes are over.
Yeah, they are.
How
She's setting
over are
timers
they?
the whole
Like
class.
2 minutes,
So
3
she's
minutes.
asking
Yeah.
how much time
Yo.
the timer
I'm
is.
sorry.
So, because
I
of her,
said
we
it,
have
I thought
2
you
minutes. You did? I didn't hear
I
you.
didn't hear either.
We want it to be very distracting because Marco will keep talking. You throw a book or something.
Throw a book at him.
Yeah, it's alright. It's okay to interrupt him. Otherwise, they'll keep talking. Okay.
I should have smashed you when I
Another quick break, maybe like 5 minutes again, and then we'll come back. We'll split up. If you have an idea about where you want to be, maybe keep that in the back of your head. I'll be doing the presentation, how you present yourself. So for me, it's important that you understand who I am communicating myself as in the market, not necessarily trying to communicate Imagineering. How to deal with that anxiety or the stress that you might be feeling. My man Felipe here will be talking about price, negotiations, skills, that stuff. Marco will be doing the expectations, how to manage expectations. So take a break, chill out, check your phones, do all that stuff. Have fun. If you say so. It's mandatory. It's
Obligatory.
So basically, you tell somebody that they are sick. Yeah, you are sick. When you have to tell somebody that they are sick. So you're sick, and that's it. Like the same way you told him 0. That's is it style?
I'm not sure what you're asking me.
Empathy.
Oh.
You need to regret to inform you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I understand that you might feel under pressure, but I hope that you can leverage the information.
Okay. Oh, it was a bit cold.
A
Oh.
bit. You could have shot him with a bullet.
What was the request though? The request was to interrupt him like rigidly.
Rigidly,
Yes.
like the samurai. Very empathic.
Yeah.
And also all setter timers, just for fun.
That'd be great.
All of them at once.
Yeah, without saying.
Yes.
Okay.
So we split into 3 groups.
Yeah.
Okay. So we only get to hear one answer.
Yeah.
Um,
Are we doing 3 rounds? Because we still have.
No.
What if
Yeah. One year goal.
Me too. Maybe we can propose it.
Yeah.
I'd rather get like a short answer
One,
than
Yeah.
3 than.
two,
Me too.
yes. We're playing
I
like
want
minutes.
to ask, like, is it really be like a wrap up? Because like everyone wants to the answer of certain questions, I think.
No, just tell him.
Yeah.
It will
You can ask
challenge
me.
his workshop design, but it's always interesting to see how he improvises. Not that I want to make troubles, but
Are you sure?
I'm pretty sure.
You guys want to do a mindfulness
Yes.
thing?
Yes.
Yeah,
Sure.
Begin by closing your eyes. Allow your mind to clear of all thoughts and focus on your breathing. Breathing easily and deeply.
Don't
Easily.
laugh. Don't, you can't be cynical if you do this. Which is
Breathing relaxation into your body and breathing away any tension. Breathing relaxation into your mind and breathing away any thoughts. Very gently begin to withdraw yourself from the outside environment. Withdraw yourself from your surroundings. Withdraw yourself from any remaining thoughts. Withdraw yourself into yourself. Into your own silence, into your own serenity, into your own peace, and relax.
10 years ago.
That's it.
They're still
They normally take you. Okay, here we go. We go out of it.
Here
And
we
now in your own turn. Oh, you're already done.
Yeah, I thought you were done, sorry.
I wanted to know how long it is. I was like, I want to cut it short.
Well, you
It's
can
good
do
to
all
hear.
of these things, or you can go to a coffee shop, buy a joint. Is it recording? That's how my generation used to do mindfulness. Well, I was not into that.
But I like the. Here
like
it says
the
that there are different
taste.
states.
No,
There are
well, my internist prohibited me anyway. She says that if I smoke a joint, I become
Different levels
psychotic.
of meditation.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
First, I think I'm at level 1.
It's
Now, or
ideological.
when I do
position,
meditation.
to be honest.
oh,
meditation.
so the voice or
Really?
the knowledge to do it.
Yeah,
Really?
you kind of have to.
But I think you need it kind of drugs to really.
Of course, also in mind. But
If you do this.
well, you know,
like
in
a
my country it's
straight
prohibited, so
thoughts.
kids
Yes, I
put
can
it,
do that.
you know,
And
with
it's
the
like
steering wheel at
level
the
2.
center you
But I
have
think
the,
if you're on level
horn.
2 yourself, then maybe
That's
you
where they
get a
put,
level deeper.
Lunch,
Me and Ryder have
so I find that it's legal, but I'm
two
not
portions.
into it. I've never been to drugs.
I have sushi.
Yeah, I have.
I should.
Yeah, my boyfriend had a sushi course workshop yesterday with his work. He made some for me.
So fun.
What type of sushi?
Yeah.
Salmon.
Sensation
There are
of
more
spacing out
complex than
experience.
It's a
It's
core.
basically
But I do know a guy.
20 years
Yeah.
ago,
And
and
also uses.
you could make a lot of money, you could get very good products, and at that time I was buying. Then 10 years ago when I
He
started
got some
it,
recipes home.
basically companies were hiring
I tried to do it one time.
expertise because they had downsized
Yeah,
they
you're
needed
not allowed to
the
have
brain.
You're not allowed to.
And now
I
there are
just
so
remember
many
my
people
world
that
and
have been
everything.
downsized. And now it is purpose,
So what
plus
else?
all of you,
It would be like.
you get a diploma and you start your own company.
No.
So the thing is that the market
I think I used the
is so
plastic
saturated.
bag.
Alright, so I'm gonna commandeer the couch area because that looks
Yeah.
comfy. If you wanna do the presentation thing with me, I'll be over there. Marco, Felipe. You guys can decide where you want to go.
Well, I'm not
You
going
wanna
to
stay
move.
here?
Yes.
I'll go this way.
No chance in the world. that
You
I
wanna-
move from here.
So are we, oh, do you wanna ask it?
Yeah, sure. Is there a chance that, because, is it now that we split into 3 groups to
Right.
answer the 3 separate questions?
Well, I mean, there were actually more than just 3 questions.
Sorry, yeah, the 3 themes.
Right.
Because I think, like, for myself, I want to hear answers to all of them, if possible.
Right.
They want it
Yeah.
all.
We have,
Same.
what I had planned was that we would do these sessions, get the answers. Then we have a session after this, which is a little bit more practice-based, and then an open session at the end where you guys can have any questions that you need answered. I was hoping that you guys would talk to each other a little bit about the answers that you were getting, rather than it just being a dialogue, a monologue for me the whole time.
Yeah, I don't know how other people feel.
Yeah.
But maybe like 3 short versions of the discussion for all of the.
Like speed dating. Make it 5 minutes and so we bring it to the bone.
So how do we set it up?
She has the clock and she knows how to
Yeah.
use it.
And then you rotate, right?
Yeah.
For example.
That could be good.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's go. Pricing.
So there are 9, so 3 per person, so I can set up a timer.
Yeah.
Give me
6.6
But it's
minutes.
still then in small groups, and then we're just moving around like a round table?
Yeah.
Yeah.
7 minutes per group then. Then we
Okay.
have the
Is that
20
okay?
minutes split in 3.
Is that okay?
Let the children
Okay.
come to me.
Alright.
Alright.
Do you want me to do the timer?
Should we sit like in a circle? Do you guys in my group, my first group?
You want to set an alarm?
I can do that, let me know, yeah, just focus on the question.
Welcome, welcome.
I think.
Hello, hello.
And
Yes.
yeah,
I'm not sure.
accident.
He's missing some people.
So
over
what's
there.
your question?
Oh, I thought it was just 3 per group and then. Okay, bye.
Alright, I'll see you guys in a bit. Alright, so you guys are Imagineers.
To be
We've kind of talked about that a little bit, right? And now we're going to talk about pricing. So Karim brought me on just to talk about that because I'm a filmmaker and I've
Yeah,
gone through that
there is not an
process.
objective.
And what I keep hearing is like, okay, you did your study,
not
you got your
related
diploma,
to-
I want to make some money. Any of you
Well,
guys want
practical
to
thing,
start their own thing or go into their
which
own
is very
venture?
much similar to getting married. You must
maybe,
secure
but it's,
the
it really
budget.
depends on what's happening during the
Because if
application
you're
as well.
talking to a company that
Because
doesn't
I'd love to
have
start
money,
something for
you're
myself, but you
wasting
also
time.
know that you cannot
It
start
might
for
be
yourself
interesting
immediately,
for
so you kind of
Right.
have to have it
contract
as a backup.
If
Okay.
there's
So
Italian
maybe
startup,
2/3 of the
I
week do
wasted
something for a
18
company,
months.
and then maybe
I
1/3
tried
working for
everything.
yourself,
I
because it's not
tried
gonna be profitable
shares,
anytime soon anyway.
Okay, how about
you,
you?
I give you
No?
ideas,
Not
you
interested
content,
in
you give
starting your
contacts,
venture?
No,
You are? Okay, what would you like to do?
external
I
financing.
am not sure.
Zoe has like 20,000 ideas per day.
Right.
Be between a lot of different things.
Interpersonal.
Okay.
But yeah, one of
These
those
guys dragging me around.
So,
So the thing is that that's not
On
a
project
company to
basis,
talk
I
to.
know.
I would not consider the company if it was not in my hometown. I still got out of it a
Really
lecture when I worked
Okay.
on digital
Well,
tourism,
besides whatever it is you're gonna do, let's talk about
which is I gave here
like selling stuff.
times to Dutch
Like, has
students,
anyone
to the
ever been in
students from
sales?
Macau.
Have you
So
sold?
you can say I got something. The
Okay.
point is that every time you've got something that is not money, you're gonna be broke.
Okay.
So that's the first thing. And for me, only very recently,
What kind of product?
I understood, which is quite stupid. but
Children
I
books
should
and
have
toys.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think for the
Before.
product,
It's very simple. You
service
say
like daycare or school, it's easy.
they don't need
because
to
everything
know
is
what
fixed.
Imagineering
Okay.
is. Imagineering is your
We have,
magic
okay,
thing.
this is the cost, the COGM.
Because you are an Imagineer, you talk about what
Right.
is talk about business.
My husband also a
Say,
trainer, and we
this
use
is
to, I
the
use to
same
like
thing they
pricing
did
for
in
him, like
Personally,
3
apply to your
million
business. That's how they
rupees,
need to
rupees,
work.
not euros, of
And
course.
then they
Yeah.
For
need
2 hours, just
maybe
if
concepting
consultancies,
or
it's
appreciative inquiry.
Right, so
but
let's
very
get
flexible.
to
I don't know
sales.
how to-
What is
The
the
thing
most
is,
basic thing anyone can sell?
Whether it's a
The
big
most basic thing. Where do we start?
whether you are talking to Coca-Cola or you are talking to a startup,
No.
just say,
Any ideas?
this is where it has been too generous in the past.
How many you're selling?
Meet them
You're selling your
3
time.
times. The
So
first
when you
time
go
you
in a
get to know
job,
each other.
they tell you
The
you're
second
doing
time
40-hour
you
weeks,
give them a
and
generic
we'll pay you this much money. Does that make sense?
introduction to what you
It's at
can
the
do for
absolute
them.
bottom at the,
With
of
some
the ladder.
specific
You
points
say,
that
I'll give
makes
you
them
this much
feel,
time, and you will pay me this much money.
makes them feel
Right, and this ladder goes
like,
up stages, stages,
they are
stages.
totally
Like I think there's 6 stages, but for us, only we pick the lowest stage, and the second stage are the most important. So the
before
first
you meet
stage is
them, you
time,
say, "My minimum
and then the second
price
stage
5,000
is a
euros."
product. Right, you're
So you
selling
have
a
5,000
solution.
euros.
And that's what you were saying. You sell
And if they
products.
say, yes, but maybe,
And the difference between
well,
a
we're
product
waiting
and
for
selling
the
your
next
time
round of
is risk.
budgeting,
When I tell you I'm gonna work
Unless
10 hours for you,
you have an
to
interest
do
in terms of
consultancy or
barter,
whatever,
because
I'm not
especially
telling
if
you I'm
you're
gonna
aged,
solve your problem in
it
those
might
10
be
hours.
good to
I'm
work
just
for
telling you
Coca-Cola,
that I'm gonna consult for you for 10
free,
hours. And if
in
I'm
order
the
to
client,
have Coca-Cola in the portfolio.
right,
But
I
these
don't
days,
care
to be
how many
honest,
hours
I
you work
did
for
it a
me, I
lot
just
in the
need
past.
my time solved.
These days,
My
every
problem
company
solved, I'm
will
sorry.
exploit you.
But
And
again,
even
it depends
if,
what
I
kind
was
of
talking
client
to
it
a
is.
curator of,
So then we come into the
Institute
production
in
process.
Eindhoven.
For example,
He has an
if
artist
you
in
are a
residence.
very
She's
big
working
company,
to change
right,
their,
and you
in the
do
strike
different
deal.
things for
And he told me, you
mechanical
know, the
organization or
commission
whatever,
with the real estate company.
you
The
need
project is
junior
about
advisors
a
or junior
research about
consultants,
gender.
like Marco
And
with Karimo. So Karimo can tell Marco, I will sell you my time,
Commissioner
right? But
was
Marco
already asking, yeah,
will tell the company,
yes,
Rena,
that's-
I will
that has
solve
nothing
this
to do
problem
with
for
the
you.
artist in residence.
Does that make sense?
That's a consultant.
Marco's taking
but
the
they
risk.
try to get it out.
Because if he doesn't
without
solve that
paying.
problem,
So it's very
He's not getting paid.
important that you have a
which
very
Karimo
high
is,
level
because he's
of
just selling his time. All he has to do is be there.
modest, although I don't
Does that make sense?
But it's very
So now
important
let's talk
that you have
about
a very high
that
level of self-respect.
So
and
let's
that you
say
are in
you want
control,
to
because otherwise
do, like you said,
people
you
will
didn't know
exploit
exactly what it is you
will
wanted
end
to
up
sell.
working for free,
Let's say consultancy.
going to work
Consultancy
in
is
the
a very
supermarket
difficult
to,
one.
to pay
Why?
bills,
Because
and the
you're
companies
paying,
benefit
you're getting
from your
paid
intellectual,
to think.
talent.
It's not tangible.
So it's very
You can't
important.
grab it.
If you make, as my wife
This is where the
says,
next part comes in.
uh,
I
when
one
you
day
do
was
a
walking
speech,
into the
a
KFC
conference speech, maybe
and I like looked
I
at the
would
menus and I was
charge,
like, it's
if
so weird
I
that you
get
walk into the
called by,
KFC
well,
and they
there are
don't
some
tell you,
companies,
we make
some
chicken here.
industries you
What kind of
don't
chicken
want
would
to
you
work.
like?
I
They
would
say,
not
would you
work
like menu 1,
I
2,
would
3, or
not
4?
go to speak,
Why do they do
conference
that?
organized
Why do you
by
think
tobacco
that is?
company. Not because I'm against tobacco, but because I don't want to be labeled as next to
It's a
tobacco.
bundling strategy, yes, to sell.
Um,
And to make
I
easier
would not
to
have a problem to go to
consumer,
speak
like
to a
what I-
conference of another
Right, so you're selling a product. They're selling a menu, right? And they're telling you, in this menu, you get this. As opposed to you walking in and being like, well, I guess I'd like 4 pieces of chicken. That would be nice. Because you as a customer sometimes don't even know. But they have made it tangible. They have made a product out of it. So in consultancy, how could we do that?
He says, would you like to come to the convention of global porn?
Package,
I would
okay,
ask
so how would that look
50,000
like for
euros,
consultancy?
Because I know that there will be some controversy. If a tobacco company is calling me and says, we pay you 30,000 euros to speak, probably I would say no.
You
Product.
sell them the
Because I
results,
don't
which
want
are
to
not
be-
there.
Although
You
it's
sell
not
them a promise.
And
Right, but if I'm a
Then,
business owner, that I
if
care about
a
my
regular
bottom line, I
company
care about
calls
making
me,
money,
I would say
why should I pay
5,000
someone to come and
3,500.
think for me?
But
That
if
makes no sense to me, that makes no money.
Because you don't have time
You
for
know,
it, or maybe not the resources, or
Okay.
maybe not the creativity.
and they
Okay,
say
okay.
we can
So
pay
you sell
you
your skills.
1,000 including the flight.
Right.
You know that it's Romania.
So the goal is to make
and
it
they have
tangible for
different
them,
currency.
right? It's
And
to
you,
let them
you
envision.
know,
Okay,
you
so
have
like a
all sorts of
deliverable, like a
ways.
business plan.
Exactly.
or-
They need to
Maybe
know
it's
what they're
only
gonna get.
100 euros.
Right, so what I do
But you
is
should always
define the
get
problem,
a financial
right? Define solution,
benefit.
and then
from
define
the
future
course.
desired
If
state.
you do it for free,
So,
there
for
must
example,
be
Nike
really
shoes,
important
right?
reasons in
They're not
terms
about the
of
shoes.
networking,
They're about the
promotion,
brand and how those
profiling.
Nike shoes are gonna make you
Also
feel in the
because if you
future.
work
Stressing us out.
Damn man, this is very little time to talk about this whole conversation. But basically, it's about helping them understand what it is they're getting for in return. And if you do it right, they will try to convince you to pay you more.
if you have an alternative.
instead of you convincing
In
them.
principle, I think
to
you should
pay you
always
more.
finish what you started.
But this is a very long
Unless
conversation,
you have ethical
7 minutes is
considerations
very,
and find out
Sure.
that
yeah, very short.
it's a black company,
Oh, it's really useful.
then you
Thank
stop.
you.
If you want to learn more, you can write
Finish
this
what you
down.
started,
You can go on YouTube and search for The Future without an E at the end.
At a certain point, if you continue
And
to get
Chris Doe,
projects,
he talks about this like in depth, and there's many talks about it, and it's called value-based pricing. So you stop selling
maybe you
hours,
change account.
but
Yeah, well,
yeah, you can research about this and learn everything I've learned.
Yes.
Thank you for your time.
Can I
guys.
stay here?
Yes.
No, serious, would that be okay?
Yes,
No, I
otherwise
think
we
it's
can sit like this
disrespectful to
forever.
otherwise.
Another time.
But we can
That's
chat
the only one.
afterwards maybe.
Yeah, okay.
Bye guys.
Felipe, stop talking.
Chatting up your girlfriend.
Yes.
How was it with Karim? You guys have seen
So how is the
Oh, sorry.
Very good.
It's
It's very good.
insights.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Okay.
How do
So, you guys, does any one of you have business
my
ambitions?
last like
to create business.
Maybe.
Not
yet.
I don't know.
I've been working
Okay.
with them 2 years,
Right,
but
this is irrelevant whether you're going to start a business or not, because in the end,
I
you're
started.
going to need to sell yourself, whether it's to a company or
Actually,
as a
I
product.
started with
All
a
right,
friend
so
of mine,
let's
and
start
she
at the
was
most basic
buying
part.
concepts at 250
What is the most basic
euros a
thing
pop.
that anyone can sell?
50 euros a pop,
Anyone.
yes.
Time.
Because when I left Philips, she
I
was
sell my time.
running
Why do
her
you
own
say that?
company in Vienna. and
Because
she
I'm
needed
coming
concepts,
to, okay, I will
urban
tell
future
about my
concepts
desire.
for
I come to
guerrilla
company,
advertising,
I have my
So
time, I
I
spend
would
my time
just
to
do
work with this
three
company.
concepts and
That's why you have to pay
and then
me.
Okay, so
I just
when
was
started,
working for
but
3
it's
years as a
different because
volunteer.
when I started,
and now I
had a
decided
huge
to
network
quit.
and, I was
So,
a
yes,
corporate
pay me,
speaker for
please.
Philips,
So
I had a lot
making
of
money, right, is a
contacts,
skill.
and
And
it
there's
didn't
different
work well
steps to this
for
to this
1 year.
skill. You start at the
Then
bottom.
I got a very
It's about
good
selling
contract
time.
from
There's
an
about
Italian
six
publisher.
ladder steps,
For the
and basically
CEO,
it becomes
I
easier, but you need
started, I
other
sent an
skills to
invoice
be able
of
to make money in
13,000
that way.
euros. And then
Now
the
the
guy
second
who was
step
my liaison
is
called
called
me and said, did you hear
selling
the
value.
news? No, the CEO
Right?
led
What do I
Philips.
mean by that?
Oh. And
When, let's say you're an
the next
engineering
thing,
consultant,
he said,
you
well,
sell
I'm
your
going to
time.
make sure
You
that
say,
they
for
pay
example,
your
I will sell you
invoice,
10
because
hours,
that was already
and that's going
a
to
problem.
cost you
But there were
500
25,000
euros,
more euros
which I'm there
that
for
was
10
supposed to be done.
hours.
So I flew
That
to
makes
Milano
sense.
to meet the new CEO, but
When you sell
it was a
value,
very complicated
you say, well, you
innovation
have
project
X
a bit like
problem,
this,
like
so it
with
was
Rena,
not
you have
going
whatever
against
problem,
his
I will
sales
come,
team. And
I
then
will
they
solve
called
this
me and
problem
they
for
say,
you.
you know,
And you'll say,
uh,
it's going to cost you 1,500
you know,
instead of 500.
we pay
Who knows what the difference is
30,000,
between
yes,
those
because
two?
that's for the
So it's a
research.
very crucial.
But we have nothing,
Well, in the
yes,
first
because the
situation, you
research is
have a
only
certain amount of
preparatory for the
time,
workshops.
literally, and the other thing is more
But we would like to
what you
get a
add
report.
for
I can
them.
do
What are
that
you
for
going to do for
80,000.
them?
But we
Right.
don't want to pay more.
What
Okay,
I
they
get
do the
out of
workshops as you sign the
So
contract.
there's
No,
something
no, the
called
workshops are
risk.
cancelled. Then
One,
you
you're
would
not,
like to
you're
have the
saying,
report for free.
if I
No
solve it,
problem.
great.
You
If I
sign the
don't, that's your
contract for
problem.
next year,
And the
25,000.
second one,
And they do the
you're
report
saying,
as
I
a
will
kind
come
of
there,
friendly rate.
and if I
Yeah,
solve
but
it
we
in
don't
an
want
hour,
to sign a
you still
contract,
pay me my money.
Said, well,
And if
in
I
this
solve it in
case,
20 hours,
I
you still
said
pay
it-
me the same.
I said it as
Does
I
that
said
make
to
sense?
you.
Yes.
Yeah, but we had a very
Right, so
In
that's
this
when it
case, life is
comes
very
to
simple.
the pricing.
We signed a
Has
contract
anyone ever
for
sold
40,000
anything here?
euros.
Like,
I
gone
got
out and sold to a
15,000.
client?
So, and I have
No.
to stop. I
Alright,
stop now, so,
So let's
we
talk
don't
about-
get anything,
let's
which
talk about
means
that
that
value.
I get it at my
Right, when
price
you
for
say consultancy, for
25,000,
example,
and you get nothing
you're
for
saying,
15,000.
I'm
And
gonna
that's how
help
life
you
goes.
think.
And then the guy started
That's
to laugh.
basically what it boils down to,
Because he
right?
said,
You're
well,
not
you're
delivering
perfectly right.
anything.
But then
Make
it
a
was May,
document,
and
right?
the project was
How do you
long,
sell
and the
that to-
25 to 5,000
to a
were
company.
gone. What I thought is, in order to make up, I
I
called
don't care.
Philips because
No,
I
you can
had
work with
lots
it.
of contacts
You
before,
can
and then
use,
I
you
dropped
can
it.
apply.
Sorry,
it.
it's
You can
very
use
nice,
it.
but I don't really
called
care
Philips,
about
telling them they cancelled my
Convince
project.
me.
And it was not my intention to call Philips because we
With,
had a lot
why
of
you
meetings
need to
and
pay
nothing
to
came out.
Why should I?
in winter.
Well,
So I called Philips and said, look, we had a lot of meetings.
because,
You said that you want to do the thing.
you didn't come
things
up
that
with
you
it
said,
without me.
But
I haven't hired you
you
yet.
didn't sign anything.
You will
So
not.
I have a
You
window
will
of
not come
1
up with
week,
it
then my
without me.
capacity is
Right,
gone, which is
so
totally not.
you see the problem we're having
And
here?
then they signed. And
She hasn't
all
convinced
the
me of
work
the
started
value
with
she's
films
gonna
that
add
went
to
on
my
for 5
business.
years.
My
Yeah.
But if
business
the
is,
Italians didn't
I don't know,
cancel
selling
the first
cars.
project, I wouldn't
I'm
have
just saying
started
something.
the 5-year
Right, but
cycle with films.
I don't care what this kid has to
And
say, like, I'll still
basically,
sell the
I had
same cars. I
one
don't,
thing that I hate in my life is
So what do you
I
need to do?
search for
We
the
can
publisher.
improve your
I
company.
tried to
We can
how do I
recruit
know,
your
how do you
business.
know,
somebody
how do I
else.
know you'll do that for
It
me?
was paid.
We can try
It
because
doesn't mean that
It's gonna
it has
cost
to
me
sit
1,500
there,
euros to
but
try.
yes,
I
but for
couldn't,
example
find
now you are
another
selling it
equivalent client.
and
But in
you had
reality,
this leg,
the thing is
why
that
you
when
why
I
you started
started,
this conversation
uh,
why
I didn't. You came here to my
remember that
office.
I had a very long conversation with
Yes, but we can
the
try
head
to
of
improve
human
your business
resources.
without
I'm sorry, I have a client.
And at the end of the phone,
I'm being
he was
brutal,
walking in
but
the
this is,
station
no, but this is how it is.
Yes.
I've had these conversations, and they're
Then
not
he
being
said, well,
rude, it's really
you're a
for
very
them
good
is
strategist.
survival
I
of the
can
fittest,
understand,
like,
done by the
if
CEO.
I
So we
don't
don't
talk
have
to my
anything
client
for
right
you.
now, I'm not
And I put
selling,
it was
and I'm
raining,
not
it was a
eating.
miserable
So this is
October
what you have
evening.
to understand as an engineer.
I was
Okay,
soaked
how am I
with
gonna
my
price that?
coat.
That's where
Then
we
I
come to
thought, well,
products.
here I am talking to a guy.
What is a
1,000
product?
kilometers
Product is basically
from my
like a
address.
shortcut.
And he's telling
When
me
you walk
that
into the
I need me.
KFC,
I
you know,
walk in 20
like you see
minutes
menus,
to,
right?
to the company
Why
where
do
I
you
used
think
to
they do
work,
that?
and I can do the
Because they
same
can
thing
shake
that I
it
used to
easily.
do there. And that's how I
They're
found
offering
it
a future desired
when we
state,
started the dialogue
right?
before.
They're making it
But
very
to be
clear
honest,
to you,
it's very
this is
much
the value
based, you know,
that we can
if
give
I have
you.
to tell you,
The
okay,
question
my
becomes, how can you
business
do that as
is
an engineer?
about the future. If you are a corporation,
Something to take home with you. Let's
with
say you,
budgets,
let's say you made
it's
this product in the
foresight,
interest of
future
time,
research.
we're rushing through it.
If you are a
Let's
small
say you
medium
make these products,
enterprise,
right?
it's an organization
These
of
products are
futures.
things that solve
And
problems.
if you are
If I'm the car
from
salesman,
a
what kind of
company
products,
seminar
banking
to a
products,
conference,
optimization products would I
I can
want?
speak about these topics from the point of view of strategic design and innovation.
Okay,
And
You
it's,
need
you know,
happier employees
sounds
to
like
sell more.
really
I don't
systematic.
care about happier.
But in
employees.
reality, it
Yes,
just
but then it
came
will be high
step by
efficiency.
step in a
They
very
will
organic way.
I
high
care about
and-
high efficient, I don't
The
care about my
organization of
employees.
futures
Yes, but
part,
high
I
efficiency.
started to
And-
see.
It is really- it's really like this, you have
And you
to.
need high profit,
For 10 years,
higher
so
profit.
I need
I
bigger
was,
margins, I wanna
yes,
spend
you
less
can-
money.
knowledgeable about
I
process
wanna
management,
maybe pay
ISO
less rent.
quality. And I
That's all I
started to
care
see
about,
that
it's
all
survival,
these,
it's really survival.
startups,
So how can
in the
you
creative industry,
offer that to me?
they would reach a point
Well, you
where
will
they
not
were
high-
four
you will not have
partners,
high
kind of
efficiency
happy
if
hippie,
your
and
employees
then after
will not
5, 7
work
years,
enough.
there
They
were
will
20
not
people working
this
for
high
them,
efficiency.
and
Okay,
they
so you're trying
didn't
to
know how
convince
to
me.
manage anymore. So I would say,
Of
well,
course.
I
The
know
game
how to
is
manage
to have your
a
clients
design
try to
or a
convince
creative
you
industry business. Or
that they need you.
Therefore,
you
I
should work
said
for
to
them.
you,
So you want to
the
switch the
expertise
dynamics.
that
Does that make sense?
Yes, but how do you do that?
Cooperation with,
You do that,
if you spend
like it's a very long conversation which we don't have time for,
you must bring
but it
back,
basically boils down to the basics of what KFC did.
20 million euros
They
of
offered you,
projects.
they see
There is
the
a ratio
problem,
of
you're
5%.
hungry, they offer you a
If you
solution,
spend
you sell
100,000
chicken,
euros as
right?
research,
And then they
you must
offer you a
have
future desired state,
tangibles that you can
which is,
resell
we'll give you
and
this menu,
package it for
because this will
millions.
solve your
So
problem.
these are all
Like,
the kind of
and you
bread
can
and
see this
butter
in
thing,
any
but
industry, basically.
for
No, but we see it,
grassroots
sorry.
entrepreneurs,
So for
this is
example,
very
next
useful
week I have a
because
conversation
they
with
don't
a
look at their business
potential
as a business,
application
they look
company.
at their business as a kind
And
of
I'm still not sure what I can do
as
for
a
them.
kind of-
And I had a meeting with my
Yeah,
coach
exactly.
just yesterday because I was a bit anxious
Actually,
about it.
Yeah.
And
I
he
don't know
told
if
me
I
just go
answered
there,
your question.
ask them what can I do for you, and then they'll talk, and then you can just anticipate to that.
That's a good start.
So
But I
then you're already switching, right? So then I listen to them, like, what do they want, and then I can show them this is what I can do for you. Thank you.
right,
That
but
what
then
you're
you're
trying to say, or?
convincing.
Oh, then I'm still convincing.
Right.
But
But it's a
if-
long conversation,
Oh.
such as we had in 7 minutes.
But if I find a leg, then they need me. If I find that they have leg somewhere, then they already need me. If during this conversation,
If you want to learn more about this, you can go on YouTube and search for The Future without an E at the end. And then you can learn The Future without an E at the end. And now we can switch guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So it's just the two of us.
Alright guys, how are you?
Good. How are you?
How are the talks?
Nice.
Yeah, you learned.
Too short, I'd say.
Yeah, it's very short.
What was your question?
Yeah, it's gonna be short here as well.
Oh,
But so you guys, any of you two are into business stuff?
What do you mean business stuff?
So you want to start a business, or you're
Like
looking
if we,
into
I'm
sales?
start a company, I
Okay.
have two
Which
directions.
capacity?
First,
As a
I
junior,
could work somewhere
staff
to
member,
gain
as a
experience, and then I would
consultant,
start my own company, or I would start
as a
maybe
CPA,
just
and
one
just
out
take
for
the
the
risk.
application. So kind of
Right.
for
Okay.
paper.
Right.
Yes.
In
How can we
between.
make sure that
How about you?
Have the same.
we can
The same.
deliver what they
Like
expect
have
from
an
us? and the other way around?
entrepreneurship
Mhm.
ego. But
Well,
now
first of
I'm
all,
just,
as I
need to
politely
get my
mentioned before,
certifications or like I'm not.
you hold an
so
expertise
I'm
that does not
drawing out
exist.
to
Imagineering does not exist.
So
So you
Okay,
need,
okay.
you
Well, let's have a
Well,
conversation about price. Let's
software
talk about
developers
selling
working
things.
in,
What is the most
big
basic
data.
thing you can
So
sell?
you just make
Anyone
a
can
call
sell.
and you get hired based on that.
A
You will
product?
not get hired based on the expertise
Service?
unless you go to
What
the
is more basic than a
You
product?
don't want to go to the FTD.
Anyone can sell.
I actually want to.
Okay, yourself.
Oh, I just
Your
love
time.
I can see you went to the Chile.
labor.
Zero.
Any job.
So,
Well, I used to work at the FD.
You'll work 40
Really?
hours, you'll
Yeah, I
work
did.
16 hours, you'll end up
You're also signing the contract based on.
you
Right.
time.
No, you
Okay,
have
so
a
you're
wrong
not
name,
saying,
Michelle.
really,
I'll
yes, but I hear a
put
lot.
this many
That's what I
baskets
say a
in
lot.
the car for
Anyway,
you, or I'll load
the,
this 5 trucks a day.
The
You're
thing, that's
saying,
the first thing.
I'll be there
You
8 hours a day, 5
you
times a
need
week.
to
Right?
to
So you're selling your
understand.
Now, making money
You need
is
to
a skill,
understand when you
right?
approach the company.
And at the absolute
You need
bottom of
to
the ladder
understand what
is
is wrong or what
selling
could
your
be
time.
improved.
There are about 6 steps.
So you need
For
to
us, only the 2
really
bottom
listen
ones
to
are
the
important. Because you're either going to sell your time, you're going to say my
person,
time
the
is
contact
50
you
euros
have.
an hour, or 90 euros, or 120 euros an hour. And then there's a next step.
observe it.
You already said
Like
it.
the guy of Reina
What's the
who
next
hired
step
me,
above
when
selling
we
your
just met
time?
for a coffee and he kept me 3 hours.
Solutions.
I thought I'd go, I have a coffee because he's an old, I
Right,
didn't
so
expect any business to
you
come from him. He's an old friend, he
Understand
came
that there's
CEO.
someone in
I
a
go to
certain
Zundert, I have a
industry,
coffee, then they're
right?
gonna drive it through
And they have a certain problem,
It was my
right?
plan.
and you anticipate on it,
Sometimes
and you
very
learn
ethical
about it,
things happen.
and you
This
know,
was
for
one
example,
ethical
that they have a problem
So
with,
I
I don't
got
know,
there
employer
and I
branding,
thought we had
or
half
they
an
have a
hour.
problem with
Instead it took
communicating,
3 hours.
which means that they are selling less, whatever.
When is that?
So you tell them, well,
When are the
I will
clubs
sell you
opening?
my
So
whatever
basically,
packet,
because he
package,
was
product,
telling me
and I will
things
solve this problem for you, and it's going to cost you.
and
this
formulating himself.
Does
Lots
that make
of
sense?
times they don't know themselves.
Alright, so this is a very
They-
broad conversation.
They know the
very
problem.
long talk,
Engineers
but
are
I'm gonna
motivated.
rush
They
through
are-
it
they
kind
lost
of.
their edge. They
Right, so
promised,
when you're gonna sit down
yeah,
with a client,
they know some points,
right,
but then you need
they
to
are either gonna be
work
very
backwards
astounded,
and
so
to
they're gonna take
build
their distance. It's
a
like,
proposition that
why
can tie
do I need to
everything
pay
together.
you to
I
come and
think in
think
this
for me?
kind of
Sorry, I need to
line
sell.
of business,
That's
it's
it.
very important
And
that
for
you
them,
make connections that
They
are
don't
not,
sell, they go out of
necessarily
business. They
seen
can't pay their
by
house,
the
they can't pay
companies
their
that
kids'
you,
school.
that you see.
Like these are
Another-
very
another thing that you
cutthroat
can do in a very
situations,
pragmatic
it's survival
way.
of the fittest.
You must be a very pragmatic person.
So how do we have that
I
conversation
don't.
about, for example, getting paid more
Eyes
money?
of eyes, icy eyes. If
Okay,
you want to be
okay.
very pragmatic, for example,
I always, yeah, I think it's good. I always say,
you just keep
you first
everything
want to
and
define
you
the
just ask
problem,
them. And I
right?
managed
And this is,
when I
of course,
came here
coming
to
from
sell
my background in
engineering
filmmaking.
minor
define the
projects,
problem, right? You say,
500
what is the problem that we
to
want
6
to
companies.
solve?
You just
And if you
tell
have a
them
product, then you can already use that.
what is something
And then you
that
say,
you would
how
really like
much
to do,
would it mean to you? How much would you save? How much
and
would
I
you
make the
more
practical
if we solve
example.
this problem?
I had a friend who
And they'll see,
was
like,
Italian,
I don't
and
know,
he
'cause they
was
won't wanna tell you
the senior vice
whatever.
president of
And you say it doesn't
Global
matter.
Intelligence at
If you
Philips.
think about that,
And he
then
wanted to really
you take a
look
conversation
into how Philips would
towards
look as a female
future
brand,
desired state,
as a brand
right?
for female
And what that
audiences.
means is,
But
if I solve this
10
problem for
years
you, then you'll
ago,
have
that was not the
this.
priority. So
Have you ever
he
walked
came
into the
here
KFC and
and
realized that they have,
he
like,
hired the
menus?
team from the minor of Imagineering,
Why do you think they do
and
that?
they did
Why
a
do they have
study.
menus? Why don't they
of
say we'll
how
make
the
any type
concept
of
would
chicken
look
for
like,
you,
they did a shop
depending
and
on how much hummus you
And
have?
you know, for the company, it's very inexpensive. They basically got
Okay,
the
okay.
campaign.
To
In this respect,
this time.
First you need to find
Okay.
somebody with the money that you need,
Measure this.
Menus are a future
or with the
desired
scope
state.
that you need. But if you go and you speak,
So what do I mean by that? They're
you
products.
need not to underestimate.
You don't walk into the
that
KFC,
being a
right?
student
And they
of
don't tell you
Imagineering,
like, we make chicken. We can make any type of chicken. They say you can order
You-
any of these menus. And that's because
big
that's a
advantage
future
that you
desired
have
state.
is that
In the
you
sense
can
of,
go
as a
to
human, you're looking at that and
a-
you're thinking, well, I'm hungry. That's my problem.
you can
I
go
can
to a
eat chicken.
company.
That's the second one.
Yeah,
And the future desired state is, I'll have that menu. I'll have that whole.
You can go to a
of
company
eating
like
that
Jumbo,
delicious
and
chicken.
maybe
If we apply that to Imagineering, how
the
will
person
a
you're
product
talking
for
to
Imagineering look?
in my function as maybe it's easier if I make an example based on me. In my function here as a teacher, I teach certain things. As a researcher,
You're
I
selling
write
something.
papers
You're
about
either, as an
certain
Imagineer,
topics.
you're either
I
selling your time,
proposed as a topic the
or you're
other
selling a product.
entertainment industry.
Asking us how the menu
My
would look like.
colleagues were not
How would,
happy.
how would an Imagineer's menu look like?
It's leisure, but they don't like to have that research. And I know
care
from
about your
technology that it's a very important sector to understand
I don't.
technology.
I'm selling
Now,
cars.
if I
All I care
was in a
about is
position
selling more
of
cars.
power like a manager, and I have a student who comes to me, we could do a study about
Like what?
adult entertainment. I would buy the study. And if you go
I'm
to
sorry,
a
I don't have
manager
time. I
and
have
the
to
manager
find
at
a way to
Albertine has an interest
About
in,
improving the company?
I would like to understand
way?
how the Albertine brand would look like
And this is the
for,
conversation you're gonna have if you come up with this.
what if we did a campaign for gay couples?
What if I can ensure
Because he
you
is gay or she's
about
gay.
improving the company?
So
In what way?
you need to connect because you're students. You're
I'm sorry, I
not
don't have
students
time for
of
this.
engineering
Finish your
or
coffee and
data
keep my
sciences. You need to try to connect to something.
So you want to identify a
the
problem,
person you're in
just like
front wants
KFC
to
has
do,
hungry
maybe because
customers.
of personal
You don't
values and
say,
beliefs.
oh,
But they normally
we can
cannot
satisfy
do.
your hunger.
And that could be a key to enter.
You say, well, we have
So
chicken
it's
for
like
you,
talking
and this
with
is the kind of
managers,
menu you
what
can
they
take.
have ideas, but they
Future
don't have
design
time to do
So
it.
for Imagineering,
They don't have time and they don't
right,
have the
something like
scope.
that, it has to be tailored to your
They
customer.
cannot afford it.
So let's say you're in the
politically,
industry of car
or
sales.
they cannot,
Right.
that guy of
What are
Philips,
problems
he couldn't
that your
afford
car
to
salesman
hire
has
an advertising
basically?
agency
What
and
kind
do
of
a
problems
study
would he
for
have?
200,000 euros about
Not selling
Philips as a
cars?
Philips
Okay.
brand.
Maybe he's
But,
not reaching
you know,
people.
he could have
Maybe
paid
he's
the
not reaching the
2,500
right
euros
people.
from his credit card
Maybe
because
employees
it was
are
habilitated. He actually asked
Okay.
me, you have a POS, so
Okay.
you can pay now.
Can't find.
The,
Low quality of what?
so you, and that's
Low
also
quality
how I
cars?
really work.
Maybe like
and
the
I work
customer
on training.
expect more.
You need to
Of the
look
car.
at the person in front of
The
you,
gap.
and you need to understand
Okay.
everything about the business.
Let's take the
objectives,
problem.
goals, the context. But then,
The car
the person in
manufacturer
front
can't,
of you is
or
a
the
person.
car salesman,
Maybe the person in
can't
front
reach
of you
his target
cares
audience.
about
That's a problem as an engineer. You might look into. Am I
how
correct?
babies are managed in the
Right.
Albertine
So how would you
cycle
define
in
a
the retail,
menu
because she
product
just
which
she
can
or
solve
he just
that for
had a
me?
baby. So you needed to try
I could say
to
I
always
agree.
keep in mind that
That
you're not
customers buy
dealing with
doing
robots, you are dealing with people.
No?
And when you look at the
I don't
people,
care
you
about
needed to ask
I need
yourself
results now.
what you
Yesterday is too
could
late.
propose, not only
You can
that
say
it's, of course it has
To
to
me,
be in
it's
the
like
business.
level up,
Because if you
like
talk
everyone can
to
define
the
that.
vice president of
It
Albertine
cannot,
and you go back and you say,
go
well,
to the
I think you
original
could
concept.
open a coffee shop
But how
in
deep can
Albertine,
it
because where all the students
go
like also.
for
It is, well, actually,
Something
the afternoon
to
was proposed
the
the red
company.
light part of the afternoon.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, the
How would they do that?
Monique Lover was not very happy. But it could be
I
a
don't
very
care about your
progressive.
research. I need solutions.
You really
It
raised
would,
it.
I would, yeah.
Makes sense.
Bring the
You
cars
don't
to
have
them.
chicken. Anyway, my point is,
Just as saying, I have chickens.
my
I
point
have
is,
cars?
if you meet,
Because what you're
then
selling
you
is your
cannot
thought
propose
process.
something that is totally off.
Right.
But maybe you
Okay.
can
So let's say
reflect about the
let's say
design
we've covered
stage
this part of
and
creating a product.
the aspirations,
Like you'll
the
spend a lot of time,
frustrations.
and I'm putting you right on the spot here.
As
but
opposite to Imagineering,
Right, we basically want to create a future
PhD
design
with
state
John Reisman, so
in
I
which
know
me as a car salesman
background
right,
appreciative and quiet.
wants to spend
But I
time
really
with
like
you,
the trauma,
wants to talk to
pain,
you, and
very
I understand that
deeply
you
seated
have a
complexes,
solution for me. Let's say we've covered
I
that.
have a portfolio
Right,
of all
you
the
design this
students who have
product,
to
blah,
finish
blah,
the thesis who had a burnout,
Now we got to talk about the price.
neurosis,
And you're
psychosis,
saying,
I have them all.
Well, I'll
and
spend
I really
I don't
can
know,
work very
500
well
hours.
with
I'm just saying
these
something. into this,
Like
or 50
in the
hours
case of
into
Rina,
this.
this big trauma losing
So
the father
that's
figure.
what,
For me, it's
2,500
like,
euros, 50 hours at 50
part
euros, something
time.
like that.
Because I come from
Right.
psychoanalysis.
If you sell
and
me
in
your time,
psychoanalysis,
No,
you
I'm
look
suddenly
for
not
the,
interested
for
anymore.
the primary trauma.
Because what if it takes
when
more
you find
time?
the
Do
primary
I
trauma,
pay more?
you know what you needed to reverse. That's why for me appreciative
Right.
inquiry.
But let's say it's a
like,
product. So you're selling that
you have an
solution.
old car and you paint
Suddenly
it,
it's attractive.
It looks new. No, it's
Why?
the
Because
old-
it's 2,500 euros.
If you go
and I
into
know
the
I'll get
engine
that
and you
solution.
find what doesn't
What if
work,
it takes more
then you
time?
can.
Whose problem
This
is it?
is more academic discussion. The point is that if you
company.
have the person in front
So
of
not
you
you.
and you understand that the person is very frustrated about the fact that there is a masculinist patriarchal culture, maybe you can propose something that goes in the direction.
Right, so
within the context
what's the
of
difference
company.
between selling
What
time and
are the
selling
ambitions,
product?
ambitions of this person?
Guys, let's take another
Pe-
break.
People in,
Just like 2 minutes.
people in,
I'll just leave you with this.
people in,
When you sell your time, you don't take any risk.
people in
If
it takes more time, you
they-
charge
Can we come back together in the center?
You can
they are
write
just
this link
people,
down,
and
and you can look
like
it
they
up
are
on
at home.
YouTube,
They have
and you
ambitions,
can
they
learn
have
like hours
aspirations,
of
they have
this. It's
fears.
the future
In
without
this
an
line
E
of
at the end.
business, you need to work a lot on the
But what
psychology
would
of
be
the
the answer
person
then?
you're in front.
Hmm?
So you're
If they
selling
have
time,
3,000 euros to
but
pay,
what if it's
50% of the
expanding?
If it's expanding, it's on the
Well,
customer.
you don't start
If you
with
sell
the
your time,
capital.
if you sell a product, it's on you.
Thank you.
So you're selling a product, you're selling the solution.
It depends. Yeah, if you sell a solution, then
But how would the menu look like?
hmm?
How would the menu then look like?
there's like that's something you need. It's a whole long process.
Okay.
Yes. So I'm sure you can learn on the website or on YouTube.
So we have what, 10 minutes? 2 minutes?
Man, that was so short.
Sorry, buddy.
Sorry.
Next time we'll ask Marco to stop talking.
Yeah, and then there is no value anymore in the
Oh.
Damn, shots fired. Okay. Were the conversations valuable? Were they able to answer the questions that you maybe had burning in you?
Yes.
Okay.
What we could take from 20 minutes, we did.
That was like a rush.
It was a bit of a rush, yeah. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Other people, comments, questions,
complaints.
complaints, points of improvement, I would call it. I'm assuming right now that there are some questions that weren't really answered during this whole process. You might feel you really need answered right now at this time in the whole imagineering process. Are there any?
Yeah, maybe like how exactly can we apply mindfulness or what we're talking about today in Imagineering, like exact some technique, something we can really do?
Something practical.
Yes.
So the first thing that I did when I came out, it was the Anna Wise book. Do you still have it?
Sorry, I'm
Collecting them all.
accumulating.
That's all right.
She's
So-
saving all the books.
This was the book that was most important for me because it helped me bridge the knowledge that I was missing. What this book taught me was how to create the state of mind that you need to handle any situation, basically, or come into a flow state, what they call it. The first step to actually doing that is cultivating alpha brainwaves. And we can do a quick exercise to do that. So you can just plant both feet. And there's many ways to do it, but I like the ones that are most unseeable, that you can just do them whenever. Just close your eyes. Marco.
Yeah, I'm the instructor, I'm not supposed to do
You're just afraid.
So just close your eyes for a second. And again, you can do this with eyes open at some point, but just for practice's sake right now. Notice where your tongue is. Is it on the top of the mouth or is it down? Make sure your chin is up, by the way. Okay, there's something called subvocation. And the argument is that when your tongue is placed to the top of the mouth, the mind thinks we're talking. So if you were to remove the tongue and just let it be as soft as possible from the back of the tongue all the way to the tip and focus on that, notice what happens.
What if I can't understand?
Can't understand what.
What happens?
Give it 1 minute to focus on a relaxed tongue. Every time it goes into tension, you relax it again. Bring the attention back. Just open the eyes and place the tongue wherever you want to. What were you asking?
Nothing.
So, what did we feel happened? Just sharing a little bit. Was there a response? Did your body change? If there's no experience, then we'll have to use a different technique, but this is the first.
I feel more relaxed.
I actually feel nauseous and uncomfortable.
It's okay. Nausea can come up from access. Access is the top part of the spinal column.
Mhm.
Once we start to relax the muscles there, if there's a disalignment there, it can cause nausea very fast. There'll also be tension in the neck a little bit. Get a massage. Go relax.
Basically, you are mass in the neck and that's
Yeah, so the nausea, it is something that's, I hear that a lot from most people that I work with. Oh, now you're giving me
I have to go.
That's okay. Do you want to take leave or?
I will. So, if I take
ouch. So, what about other people, other feelings? You said relaxed. Other people sharing that at all?
The flavor of umami really came up. I don't know if you know it. Yes.
Oh man, I have no idea what this is.
It's a flavor of, kind of tastes like you have a whole bunch of berries in your mouth, but it's in potatoes, in tomatoes, but very subtly. And for me, I just started
They
experiencing that.
Okay, so it's a bit metallic.
Yes.
That tends to happen when cortisol levels go up, which are stress levels, and the body will start to catalyze and just basically eat the muscle tissue. And so we start to taste metal in the mouth. Eat something, drink some sugar, eat some sugar or whatever. Maybe some water and stuff, and that tends to help. Don't think that it's really associated with the technique itself, but maybe that we're focused on the taste or the tongue, like so that
I
comes
think
up.
so.
For you, what did you experience?
Not really anything.
There was no difference?
I feel like when the tongue was down, it kind of first felt a bit more relaxed, but then kind of the difference blurred.
Then, sorry,
Then the difference got blurred.
then the difference got blurred? Anybody else?
It's hard to relax your tongue.
I know.
Yeah.
It's very yeah. It is. Let's try it again. Place the feet. If you feel like you're gonna throw up, maybe don't. But
It's not that bad.
so just try it again. This time, 30 seconds, more or less. Keep the neck nice and straight, so don't tilt the head a little bit. Just relax the tongue as best you can from the complete back to the tip. And then I want you to purposefully place the tongue back up and just notice if it's easier to think. And then just test, relax, and notice what happens to the thought process. attention back, Marco Feliglio. Bye, Marco. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
You can open the eyes again, and let's just share it a second time. Still feeling nauseous? No? Fantastic.
No, she just ruined my exercise.
It's okay. Once the alpha brainwaves really kick in, the external impulses won't be bothering you as much. So the more you train this preventatively, not in the moment when you're stressed, and then I relax it, it's not really going to help as much. But if you practice beforehand, the moments leading up to stressful moments or when you might feel a little bit anxious, that'll help create a buffer enough for you to not go into those states. Once the tongue is up, it creates beta brainwaves, which is the high cognitive when we're thinking and analyzing that state. But it's also the state of burnout, it's also the state of overstress, anxiety, fear, shame, grief. We don't necessarily want those emotions coming up while we're giving or facilitating a workshop or anything like that. How did it feel for others? Felipe, I'm curious.
I felt nauseous this time.
Nice.
Sure.
Is it gone or are you still feeling nauseous?
I'm good, I'm good.
Anybody else feeling nauseous? Thank God. Were you?
I think when my tongue was up, it kind of closed my head, and when I left it down, it felt like I could just drop. Well, not like physically, but like just relaxed.
Okay. Was it easy to listen to me while I was talking?
Yeah, you have a very calm voice.
That's not what I meant, but
Oh.
like, as in, were you very aware of what's happening around you, or were you more focused inwards?
I was more focused on words.
Okay. Can others relate to this? I'm shaking now.
Oh, there was not really a difference. But what I did notice was a difference in thought process. I tried to kind of think thoughts, just things I came up with and without, and when it was down, it kind of slowed down and was more difficult to focus on your thoughts. And then once you put your tongue up again, maybe it's a placebo effect, but I don't think so. I don't believe
You
it's
can read the
not.
book. This is exactly the technique that she talks about in that book.
Yeah, but then it really speeds up again and you think
Yeah,
more
that's-
clearly, like you're used like you're used to.
I'd like to just hook into that. Clearly is maybe not the correct term. It might be normal, but it doesn't mean it's clear. And if you're looking for clarity in thought process, in just way of being, relax the tongue, try to develop those deeper states. That's where the true clarity is in theta and delta. Those are the lower two states. But you need alpha to be able to manage and work your way down without actually falling asleep.
Do you really have to be like this and your eyes closed to do it,
No.
or can you also just focus on your tongue too?
Sometimes I'm talking to Felipe and I get really tired. I just like, I like zone out and then just relax my tongue and stuff. And then when I hear the, it's like a question. And then I come back, I'm like, yeah. So no, you can do it whenever, practice. And I'd really recommend practicing it with the eyes open, just to notice how it is possible to communicate to somebody in that relaxed state. You will pick up all that information. You're just not trying to respond, you're just listening to understand what this person is telling you. And I find that very valuable.
Yeah, it's time.
Lunch?
I told some of you that if you want to contact me, feel free. LinkedIn, if Felipe is comfortable with it, you can find him as well to contact us.
Yeah, like the conversation we had about pricing is so short and there's so much to it, and if you really want to know, like, I'm super down to talk about the whole process, but yeah, know that it's not 7 minutes long.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for giving us the space to talk and chat. And enjoy your lunch.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you very much for coming by.
All right, let's eat. We gotta put the tables back together.
Thank you.
Do we have lecture here next?
Yes.
Oh.
I was wondering about because you mentioned that you were working with rent. Do you have it?
Yeah.
And it's actually
Yeah, I know.
I was wondering to work with experience. Yes, and happiness of employees.
Okay.
And I was wondering if it is really possible to do this one because maybe you could use some advice.
No, I need to buy. It's not
Because I read in the literature review and yesterday
I wrote it down
about
for
the
you.
topic
I don't know if you can read
what
it.
I would like, but it's also can be flexible because not all companies want to be some such employees. And it's
Which room, which
yes, I wrote about organized teams.
Yeah.
I wrote about bottom-up approach, about leadership, and instead of feedback, I put it forward. Because it's just subtopics related to because I think that these subtopics, they are the easiest way to company
And did you write the other link, the YouTube one?
inside the organization.
There you go.
It's just
Yeah,
changing
you need to ask
mindset
them
and
for
changing
the-
organizational structure.
Yeah.
It's not that
Pleasure,
they
guys. You have class after this?
take IT outsourcing and creating. And I was thinking that this one is really important because employees will listen to what we heard. And I decided that maybe employees' happiness is actually really important because then it's
Why
hard.
do you call it employee happiness?
Because I think that
Oh, for sure.
I want to make people happy. And for me, it's like teacher brands and then a lot of companies, even Rabobank, they brought it into their vision, happy employees, happy business. They said that happy employees, happy customers. Because then if employees are happy on the work, they will have high efficiency and they will have in the end company high profit. Because I want to share my love and my energy. And then it's happier.
Answer that question. Contact me. Very deeply about that.
I answered the need. On Tuesday we have leadership pitch. And my leadership pitch was about employee savings and why I want it. Oh my God! Because I'm happy and then they make people happy and then it's happiness in you.
So when I work with people, there's a moment of hesitation that people have, and I usually
Do they stop us to the
ask a little bit deeper questions and know what it's a skill to get somebody into that deeper part. It's their stinky fish. If you can tell me your stinky fish, then I'll work with you. I'm more than happy to. If you don't tell me your stinky fish,
because it's possible. It's impossible to make all people happy, and it's impossible to bring to the company yes, it's your life to be happy, always can be happy, and nobody cares. They pay salary for employees, and employees have to work. So I'm really scared of it.